that all parties are not going to be able to somehow get their agendas and schedules sorted out to all meet here at the same time, maybe as early as tomorrow Sunday, maybe on Monday. We're talking about 4 parties here, by the way, who are expected to be here. We've already seen that the luxury resort just above Lucerne, where they are supposed to meet, it's already been branded, by the way. They're calling it the Lake Lucerne Summit. It includes the flags of the 4 participating countries, of course the United States, of course Iran, Pakistan as well as the moderator, and Qatar as also a key moderator, at least over the last few weeks. Let me give you another barometer. It's not the best in the world, but we've decided to stay, and any reporters who are going to leave today, well, they've decided to stay here as well, because it does look like things might be coming together here. And the main element hereof, why this official signing ceremony that was supposed to happen yesterday did not, apart from the fact that the document was already signed, the main stumbling block was that there was no ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. That appears to now exist. That was the big stumbling block for Iran. They now seem to be willing, if that ceasefire holds, to travel over here to Switzerland. In other words, it looks like talks might happen at the end of this week or the beginning of next.
Phil, let me just ask you about the sequencing here, and that's a word we've heard a lot of since the run-up to the signing of this memorandum. The memorandum itself, of course, calls for things to happen in prescribed order. What do we know of the way that these negotiations are likely to unfold, and sort of what these 4 parties, as you laid them out, are going to prioritize in those talks once they do get underway?
I'll tell you what, they're going to have to happen very, very quickly indeed. The comparison with the JCPOA, that's the nuclear deal with Iran that was signed during the Obama administration that Donald Trump as U.S. president exited, that's the comparison you have to make. It took a year and a half to negotiate that one. Here, the deadline is 60 days. That is obviously a very, very tall order. That is very difficult to achieve. You have to reach, and the memorandum of understanding that they've already signed, it wants to reach a solution to the Iranian nuclear program that everybody can agree to. In other words, one where Iran, again, and it's done this in the past, promises not to pursue a nuclear weapon, and where that is also essentially physically impossible. There are huge amounts of details to be discussed. Usually, when you come to these types of negotiations, there are different working groups. There is a legal working group. There's a political working group as well. That is, in theory, what would have to happen here. They still need to be established. There is so much work still to be done, and very little of that can be decided during, let's say, a day and a half of talks here in Switzerland. A long, long way still to go.
Philip, we do enjoy talking to you in front of large bodies of water. And the last time we were communicating, you were standing on the Strait. And so since you've been down there, I do want to ask you about this MOU. There's a 60-day agreement that there will be free passage, toll-free passage through the Strait. But following that, it seems more and more likely that Iran and possibly Oman will be getting together with this new Gulf Authority they're establishing to form some sort of, if not a tolling fee, now they're talking about charging a special insurance for ships to pass. Do you think that's a sticking point, or do you think that's something that is likely to happen after the 60 days, and this is something that Gulf allies and other allies are just going to have to tackle on their own because it doesn't seem to be something the U.S. wants to hang up the rest of this agreement to debate about?
Yeah, I think you're right there that the devil is going to be in the details, but the most essential part here, certainly for the Trump administration, is the traffic is moving again in the Strait of Hormuz. That is something that the U.S. president wanted to make clear to people with this agreement that has now been signed, that he has managed to get Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and that it is not using what it had used during this war, which was essentially a toll booth system where tankers and the companies controlling them would have to pay a hefty amount of money to even be allowed through the Strait of Hormuz. That is not supposed to happen over these next 60 days. But as you mentioned, Iran might want these ships all to be insured, not necessarily pay for that immediately. Maybe after those 60 days, it looks like we've got a little bit of a gray area here. But the most important thing is that the promise in this memorandum of understanding is that the Strait of Hormuz would be reopened. It is. We can confirm that tankers are now moving again from the Persian Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz into the wider world. and the worldwide oil market. Of course, there's still going to be so much left to be done. The installations in the Gulf countries that were damaged by drone and missile attacks, they still need to be repaired. Oil production has to be ramped up significantly. Natural gas production in Qatar, for example, their facilities were damaged as well. We're really not at the status quo element here yet. We're not quite where we were before this war broke out. But the most important part of this is that some parts of this agreement are already being implemented, and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz is not necessarily the most important one. The most important one, I think it's safe to say, is that there is an extended ceasefire between the United States and Iran. But coming a close second is certainly that shipping is up and running again.
Phil Crowther, great to speak with you as always. Phil Crowther, the Associated Press, joining us from Zurich this morning. Christina.
Get that Hormuz easy pass ready as those ships head through. All right, joining us now is Ian Bremmer. He's the president and founder of Eurasia Group and G0 Media. Ian, it's nice to see you. I'm wondering, as you look at kind of this rocky start that these talks have had, what do you think the biggest priorities for the U.S. need to be? And can they get done everything they want to get done, not only those 14 points, but we heard Vice President J.D. Vance talking this week and talking about how the end goal seems to far surpass what's on that paper. Can they get there at any point, do you think, if the MOU is the starting point?
No, and I'm not sure Trump really cares, to be honest with you. I mean, his back was against the wall. You heard that the United States faced economic catastrophe, and he didn't want to be Herbert Hoover if they didn't end the blockade. That is certainly my understanding of where they were, but it was very interesting to hear Trump admit that, because it shows a lot of leverage on the part of the Iranians, just how much the United States does not want to return to military conflict, just how important it was for this off-ramp to be taken by President Trump. Now, this war has completely failed in terms of being able to accomplish any of the war goals that President Trump put to the American people back when he launched the strikes on Iran 4 months ago. And I think he wants to put this behind him. I think he wants Iran out of the headlines. It took years for the Obama administration to negotiate the original Iranian nuclear deal, the JCPOA. Trump would want the nuclear agreement to be substantially tougher than that, and he has considerably less capacity to force the Iranians to the table to accept it. Not to mention the fact, as we just saw from Israel, that the ability to undermine this agreement just by starting fighting again with Hezbollah in Lebanon, which is part of the memorandum, but which the United States has no jurisdiction over. So, I mean, it's 60 days. Trump has already said that that's a soft, not a hard deadline. It'll be extended. I'm sure there's going to be continued engagement in negotiations between the U.S. and Iran. But as the strait is reopened, as the ceasefire continues to hold, that is going to be sufficient for Trump to move on to Cuba, move on to the Western Hemisphere, talk about some things that are much more positive for him than Iran, which has been the biggest failure of his administration by a very long margin.
Ian, I want to stick with Israel if I could. And the president sat down with Axios in recent hours, talked to them about the status of these negotiations and what's happening in the Middle East broadly. Let's take a listen to what he had to say in that interview.
If it weren't for Donald Trump, Israel would have been eviscerated.
Your relationship with Netanyahu's...
It's good, but we have to keep him a little bit sane.
Are you going to be able to control Israel from attacking Lebanon?
Yeah, I will be. I mean,
How?
I wonder. They have a lot of respect for me, and they do as I say.
Ian, I want to ask you about Israel not being party to this memo of understanding, which we knew about kind of going into it before it was signed. But of course, going back to February, this was a war that was launched by the U.S. in concert with Israel. So as you look to some signs of progress, the potential for progress here in these negotiations, it seems, to my mind at least, very problematic that one of the parties to the initial start of this war is not party to that memo of understanding. Do you agree?
Of course. I mean, again, there was no way that the United States could have gotten the Israelis to sign on, despite the fact that Trump says that Israel does what he says. They're a sovereign country. Hezbollah does more of what Iran says, because Hezbollah is operationally controlled in terms of military decisions by the Iranians. That is not true of Israel, which is not only a sovereign state, but also has a prime minister facing elections in October with a very restive Israeli population in the countries north that has been facing lots of these strikes from Lebanon, from Hezbollah. Now, Israel presently is occupying a significant piece of southern Lebanon, but they don't control all the territory that they would need to feel comfortable about that occupation. And as a consequence, they're going to continue to fight. Furthermore, Lebanon and Hezbollah, they want the Israelis out of that territory that Israel has no interest in moving away from. So the likelihood that we see ongoing strikes in the coming months as Israel's elections are coming up is, I would say, virtually certain. It's not 50%, it's more like 90 or 95. And if the Iranians wish to use that to delay, to extend and pretend, as we say, their engagement in these nuclear talks, it is certainly within their right to do so. So, look, the other fact is that there are a lot of other countries that aren't signatories of this agreement. None of the Gulf states are signatories of this agreement, but they're going to want to engage directly with Iran to figure out how they can ensure that they don't get attacked by Iran going forward and that they can use the Strait going forward. So too the Chinese, so too the Indians, so too the Europeans, all of whom have a stake in stability, all of whom have a stake in engaging with Iran, none of whom are going to be negotiating directly with the Americans on this 60-day deal. So a lot of the action that we're going to see in terms of Iranian diplomacy in the coming months is not going to be dictated by J.D. Vance or Jared Kushner or Steve Witkoff. It's going to be dictated in Doha and in Abu Dhabi and in Riyadh and by the Chinese and the Europeans and the Indians. And that, I think, shows just how much leverage the Iranians have and shows why I have so little confidence that you're going to get an ultimate agreement on the disposition of Iran's enriched uranium stockpiles and their willingness to limit their uranium enrichment going forward.
We want to pick up on nuclear, but before we do, I do want to ask you about another glaring omission from these 15 points, and that is nowhere in there does it talk about the ballistic weapons program, which, as you mentioned, the Gulf allies, obviously that's what they are incredibly concerned about because those are the weapons used to hit Dubai, Abu Dhabi, you know, everyone in the region. And the president was asked about that very issue at the G7 and had a pretty surprising response.
If other countries have them, it's a little bit unfair for them not to have some. A ballistic missile is not the same thing as what we're talking about when we talk nuclear. But if Saudi Arabia and Qatar and they all have some, I would say in relative proportion, I think it's okay. That's what I mean.
Now, J.D. Vance was also asked about those remarks and the program in general, and his argument was the U.S. has done a lot to take out the missile launchers, which he said, you know, it's not about the bullets, it's about the thing that fires them. But what is your assessment of the capacity of Iran's ballistic weapons program, and what can be done to assess that threat, as well as the threat of Iranian proxies, which is what people in the region, U.S. allies in the region, are really concerned about?
Well, it turns out that Trump's assessment of what he thought he could get out of Iran and what was and what was not acceptable was significantly greater when he thought he was winning the war. And when it appeared clear that he wasn't winning the war, that he couldn't achieve his outcomes militarily, that the Iranians were not going to capitulate or engage in full surrender, as he told American allies and the American public that they were about to in the first weeks of the war, then suddenly his war goals changed. And what was acceptable from Iran changed. We saw that in terms of Trump saying suddenly that they could have ballistic missiles. He wasn't saying that at the beginning. Trump saying that this new regime is pragmatic and that he can engage with them. He was saying that that was not the case at the beginning. He was going to rescue the Iranian people. He would choose the new supreme leader. Obviously not happening. Just in the last 2 days, he said that the frozen assets are Iranian money. Why would we, the Americans, steal Iranian money? That wasn't what he was saying a few weeks ago. It wasn't what he was saying a few months ago. On literally every issue being demanded by President Trump in the early stages of the war, he has backtracked, he has flip-flopped, he has backed down. And in that regard, this war's outcome is very much like Trump's effort with the Chinese a year ago, April, where he was going to force complete capitulation on a smaller, weaker Chinese economy by hitting them very hard with American tariffs. Turned out the Chinese were capable of taking that pain and hitting back the Americans hard, so much so that the U.S. would have been driven into a catastrophe economically. A lot of their companies would have been shut down by the absence of critical minerals and rare earths. So what did the U.S. do? They backed down against the Chinese. Trump treated the Chinese with much more caution, much more flatteringly, much more willing to find a compromise as opposed to demand a set of unilateral requirements that China was never going to accept. That is exactly what has happened with Iran, except the consequences for the United States are much greater, much more embarrassing. And Iran, of course, is a much smaller country, a much clearer enemy and adversary of the United States and of its closest ally, at least thus far, in the Middle East, Israel. So that's why Trump has changed his view on the ballistic missiles. And you're right, him saying that Iran should be able to have ballistic missiles is surprising, but it's only surprising when you view it by itself. It's not surprising when you view it in the context of everything else Trump has been saying about all the other demands that he used to have of the Iranian regime, and somehow those demands no longer matter now that Trump needs an off-ramp.
Ian, very quickly here, the prelude to this war, of course, were these talks that the Omanis were intermediaries to. And now we have Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, the same principals, traveling to Switzerland, presumably in the coming hours to engage in these talks once again. Does that engender any optimism in you? Yes, they've been to Oak Ridge. They've been traveling around eastern Tennessee trying to develop some nuclear expertise here. Do you think these two men, perhaps in concert with the vice president, have the technical manpower at their disposal to be able to kind of get through this 60-day period and make tangible progress when it comes to the nuclear file?
Progress, maybe there'll be some signs over the coming weeks or months that the talks are constructive, but that's very different. There's been tangible signs of progress over the past several months, and then Trump says, "I'm going to destroy your civilization," or "I'm going to attack your energy infrastructure. I'm going to blow you up like you've never seen before. No more Mr. Nice Guy. I know I already killed your supreme leader, but no more Mr. Nice Guy." I'm sure there will be some perspective on progress. What I'm saying is I would bet a great deal that there will not be a successful executed nuclear deal between the Americans and the Iranians. I think that Iran is going to focus much more on the money that they can extract together with Oman from the Gulf states, from other countries that wish to have continued access through the Strait. And it won't be a toll, as you suggested earlier before we started talking. It'll be insurance. It'll be, some form of authority for their responsibility over geography that they, of course, still have. But ultimately, I do not expect that all of Iran's enriched uranium stockpiles will be diluted or turned over, nor do I expect that there will be an implemented, inspected deal that prevents them from enriching uranium at beyond civilian levels. I hope I'm wrong about that. I would love to be wrong about that. I don't expect that I'm wrong about that.
All right, Ian Bremmer, thank you so much for joining us this morning, of course, of the Eurasia Group and G0 Media. And we're going to go to Lisa Mateo now for an update on the headlines.
You got it. Let's update you on those top stories. Nearly 1,700 tourists, they were evacuated from a luxury resort in the Dominican Republic after a deadly fire. Local media reported one Italian tourist died. Several others were injured. Guests of the Viva Dominicus Beach by Wyndham Resort, well, they were transported to other hotels and nearby housing facilities. The cause of the blaze still under investigation. The country's emergency operations center, it said the fire spread quickly due to high winds and also because part of the resort's roof was made of thatch. Now, the cleanup continues in parts of Mississippi after the remnants of Tropical Storm Arthur flooded roads and knocked down trees. Arthur was the first tropical storm of the season in the Atlantic Basin, but it was quickly downgraded within a day of forming. But the lingering system, it caused drenching rain and strong winds in Louisiana and Mississippi. And President Donald Trump says the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool was intentionally vandalized and that an investigation is underway. In a late night verified posts on social media. The president said the algae is 75% gone and, quote, that area that was vandalized, unfortunately, is just a small area of damage and will be fixed early next week. And the post comes one day after the blue material at the bottom of the pool began peeling off. It's part of a $15 million renovation project. David and Christina.
At least this is really something.
Yes.
I've really been tracking this and find it somewhat amusing, also terrible. But I was doing a little research. 2012, they installed some new filtration thing in the reflective pool.
I want to rewind. Wait. So you're voluntarily doing pool cleaning?
Yeah, it's like, has this happened before?
Okay.
Indeed, in 2012, they had a big algae bloom. They had to drain the whole thing. That took several days. What I find most wonderful about that moment in time is there's actually an algae lobby.
I'm sorry, what?
And the algae lobby was pushing for them to keep the algae in the pool. They thought it was good for, I think, the air, good to have a place. Okay. Anyway, more on that to come. But I was A, impressed that this has happened before, and B, that there's an algae lobby that was pushing for them to keep the algae in the pools. I have not checked in with them with this latest bloom to see if that's still their position, but perhaps we should.
I feel like
this
is a missed opportunity. We should see if we can talk. All right, coming tomorrow, we will reach out to the algae lobby.
Appreciate you, David Gura.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Lisa Mateo. All right, another earthquake this week in UK politics. Prime Minister Keir Starmer is facing renewed calls to resign after the election of Andy Burnham to Parliament. Burnham, the former mayor of Manchester, is expected to challenge Starmer as Labour Party leader, which would, of course, force him out of the job.
Starmer has so far resisted calls to step down. Joining us now from London is James Woolcock, Bloomberg UK's politics reporter. James, great to speak with you, and put this into some context for us here. So this was a thrumping, I think we could call it, a sizable victory that took place in this part of England. What's the path forward now? What should we be watching for next?
I mean, that's such a good question. It is like, I don't cover by-elections like this because it is totally unprecedented. You don't get a sitting government going into a special election, increasing its majority by 23%, and then doing so on a pitch of let's get rid of the current leader. But that is effectively what Andy Burnham has done. This is where it gets messy, David. We don't know how Keir Starmer goes at this point. We are reporting this morning that 15 of his own cabinet ministers privately think it's inevitable that he will go, but he is publicly telling people that he wants to stay, that he wants to fight. And so broadly, there are three ways this goes out. Keir Starmer steps down, which seems unlikely, but it might happen. He might set out a path out. There is a formal leadership challenge, which would be sort of extremely messy and difficult. Or there is some kind of form of contested leadership contest, or even like a vote of confidence. We don't yet know. We are in kind of the calm before the storm at this point.
You kind of answered my next question for me, but we have some sound from Starmer that I want to play for you, just about saying that he would, in fact, run in that leadership contest.
There isn't a leadership contest.
But when there is,
at the moment,
Prime Minister,
there isn't one at the moment. But as I've said on many, many occasions, I don't think that's a good thing for the country to plunge us into chaos. I would also add that now that Andy has won, which is really important, really good, he's a huge asset to us, then now will inevitably be a Manchester mayoralty by-election starting straight away. So it's important that we pull together for that. But if there is a contest, just to be clear with you, then yes, I will run, I will stand, and I've said repeatedly, I'm not going to walk away from that.
Why isn't he going to walk away? For all the reasons we've been talking about, momentum is really not in his favor, even within his own party. One of the things I've always admired about British politics is this kind of, resignation of folks when they see that the room is not with them. Is this a departure from that? And what does he think he has to gain by trying to dig in here?
So you could take it a couple ways. I think, obviously, you've got to say ego. You're in charge. You want to stay, keep the job. I mean, London property prices right now are killer, I can tell you. And finding a new house, that's on number 10 Downing Street. But, right, on the other side of this, Keir Starmer was elected after 3 Conservative prime ministers stepped down in one parliament. And he built his whole pitch on, I am going to be stable. We're going to have no more of that nonsense. And I'm going to be in charge for 5 years and run a government. And so his genuine fear, I believe, from talking to sort of people inside the party, is this would encourage some form of Labour Party internal divisions that would not be recoverable from. So he's like, if I step aside, what is the democratic process here? Look, Andy Burnham has won this incredible win in a by-election, and it really is not anything like anything I've covered. But that's only 70,000, 80,000 voters of the sort of 1 in 650 areas in the UK. It's not winning a general election. And so Starmer's kind of point of view is, I did win a general election. That gives me 5 years to do what I want. Why should I give that up without a fight? That's anti-democratic. That would be his view. Now, the Burnham view, they also look at the Conservatives and they go, please don't make this vicious. Please don't make this messy. We have the votes. We will engage in a policy of everyone publicly calling for you to go if we have to, but we would much rather this be a bloodless coup. Andy Burnham gets signed into sort of office. There is a coronation, effectively, what we call it in the UK, mirroring our sort of royals. And that is kind of the safest, most stable path. They are, this weekend, behind the scenes, basically trying to argue this out. And we'll see if they manage to sort of reach an agreement.
James, I'm reading up on this, and I see the names of a lot of graybeards, Jim O'Neill among them, Andy Haldane, another one, and I'm seeing reference to the UK fiscal rules circa 1997. For our U.S. audience, our global audience, our non-UK
audience. And for your co-anchor who did not read up on whatever this is, yes.
Help us understand the significance of the UK fiscal rules and Mr. Burnham's propensity, if he has it, to kind of bend those going forward.
I love it. First it's the algae and now it's the fiscal rules. David, you have such a hint of that. So, unlike the US, the UK is really not trusted by foreign investors. It borrows at more than it puts away in tax revenues. And so it has a fiscal rule, which is after we get to 5 years, the government says in that 5-year forecast, it has to balance the books. And although it's kind of just a rule that the Chancellor made up, and the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, it has become something the markets treat as like this quite totemic. Labour is committed to not borrowing a ridiculous amount. It's kind of a vibes-based thing. So look, Andy Burnham could come in and tweak the fiscal rules. And the reason why my great colleagues in the UK government team, Jacob Reed, wrote this piece is because if you look at the people who are backing Andy Burnham, like you said, these are serious people, the likes of Richard Hughes, who used to run the Office for Budget Responsibility, which is the independent forecaster. He's taken very seriously, like Jim O'Neill, Lex Goldman, Andy Haldane. They are all very serious economists the bond markets trust. As economists, they think this rule cuts off long-term investment. They think it's short-termist. But people are concerned in the markets about Andy Burnham. They are concerned he's more left-wing than Keir Starmer. They're concerned he's promised to end 40 years of neoliberalism, as he calls it. And so he might have quite limited room to maneuver. I have to say, the dog that hasn't barked in our coverage so far is this election happened Friday morning, the results came in. Gilt markets, sterling, were remarkably muted. And so I suspect what we're all watching for here is A, how this contest plays out, which is still not a formal contest, I should say, but it is clearly going on. B, who Andy Burnham picks to be his chancellor. That is the big signal markets want to watch. And it's possible, if he can win the market's confidence, he might be able to tweak the fiscal rules a bit. But currently they are seen as like this big totemic symbol that the government is committed to not spending ridiculously.
James, we've only got about a minute left, but a couple headlines this week and a big one in Reuters talking about how London, for the 6th year in a row, I got to pull this up, did maintain its status as the top financial center in the world, ahead of New York and just ahead of Singapore coming up third. Is that something that's in the back of the minds of all of these parties as they try to maintain some sort of stability? Because you were just talking about how, you know, uncertainty breeds chaos in markets and people like predictability. Is that something that everybody has to think about London's reputation as a whole, as this bastion of finance, and they need to have a government that is able to support those systems?
I mean, it's not going to be an answer you're going to like, Christina. No, sadly. I think when you talk to quite sensible people in these parties, and they do care about this. They look at Brexit, they look at the damage that's caused, they wonder how long London can keep that crown in the city. But Andy Burnham won in the north of England, talking about rolling back the pitch to London, getting the regions having better growth. So I'm not sure that's what they're thinking about at all.
James Woolcock, great to speak with you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that perspective here on this Saturday morning.
Thanks so much. That was great. Coming up, SpaceX finished its first week of trading $50 above its IPO price. Are investors turning their sights on the next mega offering? That's coming up on Bloomberg This Weekend. Stick with us.
The countdown is on. Everything you need to get the edge at the end of the market day. Get ahead of tomorrow's trading with The Close. Weekdays on Bloomberg. Context changes everything.
is going to be the consequence for U.S. markets?
We are seeing modest gains across European equity markets.
Take a look at how we're faring when it comes to Asian markets.
In case you missed it on Bloomberg Tech Asia.
Humanoids are particularly interesting for many reasons. One is that they can actually go into regular everyday environments, which were designed for humans. The other reason from the machine learning perspective is that humanoids have the shape of humans. So perhaps we can learn from humans doing different tasks and transfer that onto humanoids.
Don't miss Bloomberg Tech Asia every month.
In case you missed it on Bloomberg Surveillance. What is the worst Fed's response mechanism to inflation that is inflecting upward, given the fact that this Fed has been incredibly dovish? Are they going to wreck the party? I mean, ultimately, it's easy to be a skeptic, but I might as well join the party and not be so, skeptical, because you're not paid to be skeptical. You're not paid to poke holes. You are paid to just go with the mob.
Have we got that breaking news whoosh that drives across the screen? Can we play that now? Sort of breaking news.
It's the job. Come on.
Bramo, I think, going to look to confirm this, but I think Bramo just turned bullish. Is that what just happened?
I think that it just doesn't pay to be skeptical. You take a look at every single different benchmark.
Okay.
I mean, it's sort of, what are we trading people? We are trading them that you cannot lose, and that seems to be the way to go.
Bulls everywhere this morning, getting very nervous following that.
Don't miss Bloomberg Surveillance, live every weekday.
Investors, top executives, global innovators. Join me for in-depth conversations with the biggest newsmakers on the day's top stories. Insight with Haslinda Amin, only on Bloomberg.
Mind being called an ideological lunatic or a bunch of left-wing nut jobs?
You know, I've been called worse things than that.
23andMe, I think, is so incredibly valuable. We're coming back.
What magazines were you reading as a kid?
I don't think I was reading magazines until I was in them.
So is it Paradise Ahead or Gattaca?
Maybe somewhere in the middle.
Good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Welcome back to the opening trade.
It's Bloomberg Money.
This is the Asia Trade.
This is Wall Street Week.
Welcome to Balance of Power.
You're watching Bloomberg Deals.
Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend.
This is Bloomberg Television.
In case you missed it on the opening trade.
We're holding our breath, and our economists put it very nicely in their recent research note. They're saying, for now, you got the support of tax refunds, so you had the fiscal support. This is running out right now. The real test for the consumer starts here.
How are you going to hold your breath for?
I'm holding my breath in two different ways. The first question is complicated.
Unpleasant.
Well, that's what you have to do as a market strategist. It's unpleasant, complicated, but also exciting, I would say. So we're holding our breath and saying, are you going to reopen that strait? Then secondly, if you don't reopen it, how long can you keep running down oil inventories to make up the shortfall? The equity market's pricing 90%. Prediction markets are saying it's a 30% probability that you reopen it by the end of June. And then if you don't get these supplies back soon, then within the next 3 months, you should start to see macro weakness, not just in Europe, not just in China, but also in the US.
Don't miss the opening trade, live every weekday.
Technology is embedded in every aspect of our lives, and that revolution is playing out in real time. From finance to defense tech, AI to entertainment, from the road to the stars. Bloomberg is bringing you the stories of companies and people that are pushing tech to new frontiers, and the politics reshaping global tech markets. I'm Ed Ludlow, live in San Francisco, and this is Bloomberg Tech.
Every weekday, only on Bloomberg Television.
Welcome back to Bloomberg This Weekend. So much focus in recent weeks has been on the SpaceX IPO and AI. But let's flip the script this morning to talk about value investing. Seth Klarman is one of the biggest names in value investing. He's someone who often draws comparisons to one Warren Buffett.
All right, before SpaceX first week on the market, when the company traded 37% above its initial IPO price, the CEO of Baupost Group sat down with our own Barry Ritholtz on the Masters of Business podcast.
They discussed a wide range of issues, including the sky-high valuation of companies like SpaceX. Here's what he had to say.
What I would say to you is I share your sense that this is the kind of bell that might ring at the top. It is an unprofitable company in aggregate. It is an enormous valuation. I think we both read in the paper this morning the Goldman estimates of what growth would have to be in some parts of their business, like 100x, in order to justify the current price.
For a long period of time.
For a long period of time. And those projections have a way of not happening. It's not impossible, but it's hard. I think that it is... I think investors might be missing just how much money is being sucked out of the system between large IPOs. This won't be the last one. OpenAI and Anthropic are coming, and there's a ton of other IPOs that are stuck in institutional investors' portfolios that also they'd love if they could get them off at any point. Then the float might be tiny today, but you have a large number of shareholders, private investments. We read again this morning that 10 or 15% of some endowments, entire endowment is in the one name SpaceX. So they're going to want to sell. Employees are going to want to monetize and go from being wealthy on paper to wealthy in a bank deposit. And so that's a lot of stock for sale. And we have to sell that stock while apparently Google and Facebook need more money, and where OpenAI and Anthropic need more money, and utilities need more money to power, and chip companies need to build new factories in America. There's so much demand for money, and I think we're in a vulnerable place where ultimately supply and demand for money determines the cost of capital, and that's true in a bond market, and it's in effect true in the stock market. So we might be looking at some supply-demand excess where prices soften just because there's so much supply of securities, and the need to monetize is so great by these private companies.
And that was famed value investor Seth Klarman on this week's Masters in Business podcast. Joining us now for more on that conversation is the host, Masters in Business, Barry Ritholtz. Barry, great to speak with you. And let me start with what we heard Mr. Klarman speaking about there just a moment ago. That's all the money getting sucked out. Yes, by this SpaceX IPO, but presumably what will be sucked out by the OpenAI and Anthropic IPOs here in a few weeks' time. What does that mean broadly? I think we had a long conversation on this show with Ed Ludlow, Bailey Lipschultz about, like, if SpaceX goes first, there's such enthusiasm, so much eagerness to get into that stock. What does it mean for these other two companies intending to go public that are so massive in their own rights?
It's so funny because Klarman, throughout our whole hour and change conversation, repeatedly said, I'm a bottoms-up guy. I'm not a top-down guy. Our decisions are made one by one on each specific investment decision. And yet, when we're talking about IPOs, that's a very much a top-down situation. You know, the world is complex. We go through a period where it was a year and a half ago, everybody was complaining, gee, we're no IPOs, nothing's coming out, this is terrible. Now you have a lot of giant IPOs coming out, and a different group of people are unhappy. The bottom line is, for someone who's a value investor like Klarman, how expensive are the opportunities that are out there, and are we willing to sit in cash and be patient? Throughout the 40-plus year history of the Baupost Group, there have been times where he's raised 30, 40, 50% cash of their total investable assets, which is something like $23, $24 billion right now. They haven't done that yet, but he's starting to accumulate more cash as opportunities become either pricier or harder to find.
But is there, I mean, to follow up on David's question, possibly with a dumber version of it, is there an endless amount of money here? At some point, if all these IPOs are going for these astronomical amounts, doesn't not just interest, but don't you run out of supply? Or is this something that you think the market can sustain?
So, well, first, if you look at the SpaceX IPO, forget the $2.5 trillion. That's make-believe mark that doesn't reflect the fact that $75 billion is what's floated, which is, let's be honest, these days with so many trillion companies, $75 billion is just walking around pocket cash in the capital market. That's number one. Number two, Deutsche Bank did a really interesting analysis that said, let's look at the percentage of total market float of the whole market of new issuance. And this year, we're about 0.8%. We peaked somewhere in 21 during the SPAC frenzy, around 2.2, 2.3%. So there's a ways to go before this really becomes problematic. And keep in mind, now that SpaceX is public, it's going to take them a full 12 months to slowly feed out a healthier chunk of their float. I haven't read any of the docs on Anthropic or OpenAI or any of the other potential mega IPOs, but my assumption is it's going to be something similar. They'll come out with 50 to 100 billion, a tiny slice of the float, and then slowly feed that out as they judge market appetite for it.
Barry, you talk to investors of all stripes, and I want you to put value investors into that pantheon. Not the sexiest kind of investing, but I'm curious in this moment, sort of the role that they're playing and how we should look at somebody like Seth Klarman in the context of the kind of fervor that we're seeing, the excitement, the enthusiasm we're seeing about AI and all the potential that it could bring here in the future. What is the role of value investing today in the year 2026?
So, the definition of value investing has changed over the years. And I think of someone like Klarman as not a straight up traditional Graham and Dodd equity value investor, but Baupost has demonstrated they're opportunistic. They look at different asset classes. They look at distressed debt. They look at credit. They look at real estate. They're not afraid to go outside of the traditional U.S. equity selling at a discount because some company ran into a hiccup. And that's part of the reason why Baupost has put up numbers about 20% a year for the past 42 years. That's pretty impressive. That said, when we are in an environment where large cap growth, where momentum is dominating, value, forget not being sexy, value is going to generally underperform in that environment right up until the point when the leadership shifts. Go back to 99 and 2000, how many people said Warren Buffett is done, this value is over, just as we were about to enter a decade-long period of value outperforming growth. So someone like a fund like Baupost that has a lot of different expertise and a lot of different ways of approaching opportunistic investing, the traditional equity value approach, when that's out of favor, they look elsewhere. And again, he is not afraid to hold, a chunk of stock. Now, Klarman in the interview said, hey, back in the day, there were times where I would hold 40, 50% cash. Yeah. We really don't do that anymore. We try and find some opportunity that'll generate a return while we're waiting for better opportunities. But 10, 20% cash is not unheard of. And he thinks that we're not quite at the top. He's certainly aware of, if you listen to the conversation, he is aware of the impact of AI and how it is generating a lot of activity. Yes. And that sort of momentum could push for a good couple of years.
Very great to speak with you as always. Barry Ritholtz, the host of the Masters in Business podcast, joining us on this Saturday. Be sure to check that out anywhere you get your podcast. Barry, thanks again.
And when we come back, Lisa returns with BTW, stories you might have missed during the week.
You can explore all our live streaming news and interviews at Bloomberg.com and, of course, on the terminal.
In case you missed it on Balance of Power.
Are you worried about this type of rhetoric? We're now looking at an indefinite extension to the ceasefire.
I think patience and perseverance are what we need here. And bear in mind that the idea that somehow after 47 years of entrenching itself in power, that what the president first said, 4 to 6 weeks, was never realistic. And it's 8 weeks now. It's still not realistic. The issue, I think, is whether we can take back control of the Strait in order to allow Gulf Arab oil out onto international international markets. And remember, some of that oil is going out through pipelines in Saudi Arabia and the UAE in any event. But we prohibit the exportation of Iranian oil, open the rest of the strait to get the Arab oil out, calm the markets down. I think we should be prepared to take the time necessary to overthrow the regime. We'll regret it if we let them up and find out later.
Don't miss Balance of Power live every weekday.
At 9:30 a.m., the market tells you what it's really thinking.
We beat the drum to the opening bell.
With deep analysis of the forces driving the price action.
Focusing investors on what really matters.
Where the money flows, which markets are changing.
Conversations with players shaping the narrative.
Innovative growth companies gravitate to NASDAQ.
It's not just like, let's buy the Mag 7 or AI.
That's a really compelling story.
This is where your trading day begins.
And this is Open Interest.
Only on Bloomberg.
In case you missed it, on the China show.
We're just over an hour away from that Trump-Xi meeting. Outside the Forbidden City is our chief North Asia correspondent, Stephen Engel.
So much is in store in a very short amount of time. Obviously, he's going to only really have about 36 hours.
Overwhelming coverage of the Trump-Xi summit.
I believe he is waiting. There he is in the blue suit. President Xi Jinping is waiting for Donald Trump, of course, to step out.
There he is, there, walking towards Xi Jinping. It's 36 hours. That's really not that long of time for the president here in Beijing. The two men. This is quite historic, Dave.
So definitely a warm welcome. Obviously, the real negotiation is going to begin now.
Definitely, the president has brought the A team there. I mean, that's an all-star lineup, and it's very impressive. I think you guys did the math there on $30 trillion worth of market cap.
Don't miss the China Show live every weekday.
In case you missed it, on The Pulse.
It's a $75 billion IPO, the largest in history. I think it presages the beginning of a pretty sizable wave of IPOs, which we're excited about. I also think it shows you that the capital markets, led by the U.S. capital markets, but the global capital markets are demonstrating a willingness to finance this AI infrastructure build and this build in space, which is quite exciting.
Don't miss The Pulse, live every weekday.
Welcome back to Bloomberg This Weekend, or BT Dubs. I'm Christina Ruffini. That's David Gura, who constantly wants me to say the full W.
Well,
it's a BT Dubs kind of weekend.
All right, I'll go with it.
We're going short and sweet.
With it.
Lisa, talk us through some of the stories we might have missed.
You guys. Okay, remember we talked about that nearly $10 butter cone?
Oh, I can't forget.
Okay, we're going on with the ice cream.
It was dipped
we're going
in
on with the ice cream theme.
Butter vat.
This one from Bloomberg, okay?
All right.
Frozen yogurt is having a renaissance, this time at $30
Boy, is
a bowl.
Yes.
You know when you go and you take your family and it's they self-serve and they just put everything on top of it and it comes out to like $30? That's what this is about. So this is Mimi's in downtown Manhattan. Have you been to there?
I haven't, because I refuse to wait in line for food. But I do love frozen yogurt. But I'm not waiting in line. But it looks lovely. I don't know. Have you been?
Well, that's the thing. Like the co-founder, she's in her 20s, so Gen Z is loving this. They like the fancy
Welcome,
toppings.
guys. We've been doing this, but glad you're on board.
Gen Alpha also loving this.
Really?
Yes,
they do.
Oh, yes.
They do.
Oh, yes.
And they love the toppings. They have the nice, cool vibe. You know, you go there, you can hang out. And yes, it's sometimes $30 to go there.
You don't know. I just did this the other day. You go and get the frozen yogurt in a large cup, and then there are a myriad of choices for toppings, and they weigh it.
And they
at the
weigh
end,
it. Do they weigh it after
no
the
idea.
toppings?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, that's really cool.
Absolutely.
That's smart, but cool.
Yes.
But the reason why it's popular, they're saying, is because they're pushing it as this healthier version to ice
toppings
cream.
are not healthy, I must say.
But that's the problem.
Yes.
Is it healthier?
It has less calories than ice cream, but the toppings. Then you chop it with
highly
M&Ms
caloric,
and
as I saw it. I had the Heath, I had the turtles.
See?
Was it good? Sounds pretty good.
It was all very good, yes.
Okay.
But
was it $30 good?
Was it? Yeah. Did you?
I didn't pay that much, but I'm not going to these. I'm not in
I've gone close. I've gone
close?
like the 20, almost for one.
Wow.
My daughter, like, she topped it off.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. Okay.
All right, we'll have to do a group outing.
It's dangerous, those self-serve froyos.
Yes.
We've been talking so much about the World Cup, right? So here's an interesting angle. This is from the Boston Globe. We've never seen anything like it. Patrons emptied bars and liquor stores in Boston this weekend.
Is this about the Scots? I feel like it's about the Scots.
It is, okay? So you can blame the World Cup, the Scottish fans. They emptied bars, liquor stores of Corona, Budweiser, Coors, seltzers, ciders, even the Tennant's lager, that's their most popular beer. gone.
This is a beer town we're talking about as well.
This is not a town that does not
manufacture a lot of beer.
Exactly.
So you're thinking of like Hennessy's Bar in downtown. They said they tripled St. Patrick's Day.
Wow.
Like, can you believe
Put that on
just
a
from
sticker.
this?
That's
so,
amazing.
I mean, they're happy because it's kind of bringing this new excitement to the area, but they have to bring in extra staff. Like they're low on supply. I mean, they're just trying to keep up. And then you have the English fans who are coming to Boston next week because they're taking on Ghana on Tuesday.
Okay.
So there's more to come.
More thirsty fans coming to Boston.
I've been loving the confluence of cultures. I think sending the Scottish fans to Boston was a very, very good fit. Did you see them at Fenway Park?
Yes,
I
heard that their presence is like palpable.
Yes,
That like
yes.
20,000 Scottish people
With
in
the
Boston
kilts.
is you noted. The weather has changed.
Apparently, singing the Proclaimers, I was listening to this morning. And I will walk 500.
We don't have the rights for that.
Well, that wasn't anywhere near on tune, so I'm sure we'll be fine.
They might complain.
But they played that at Fenway, and they all sang it, and then they stopped playing it, and they just kept singing it over and over and over again. It was
Can't
great.
stop them.
It was
Can't
great.
stop them.
Come to New York, guys. Welcome here.
You know what else happened in New York? Of course, the Knicks parade, right? The fever is still going. This one's interesting from the New York Times. So it says a Jalen invasion may follow the Knicks win. We're talking about baby name watchers, okay? So they're saying that baby name consultants that Jalen is going to be the next popular baby name for boys and girls.
I believe it.
Because you think it can be a boy's name or a girl's name. Not only the Knicks players, you have Joshua, for Josh Hart.
Sure.
Miles for Miles McBride.
Yeah.
You have Tyler for Tyler Kolek, and also Landry is even going to become popular.
Not OG though?
Not OG.
Baby OG?
It's not.
I feel like Baby OG would be pretty good.
It was the likability of the players, so they're
Yes.
just saying it brings a good vibe. So that's why they want to name their children. And they can even do the first middle. Like if I had a child, it would be Jalen Brunson Mateo.
It would be.
See?
She's saying it right here.
But that ship
Breaking
has sailed,
news.
my friends.
Oh, that ship has sailed.
No, Lisa. No. But you went to the parade.
Speaking of
Yes.
vibes, tell us about the parade.
It was incredible. Just the excitement out there. The crowds were. I mean, I've been to the Giants parade. I've covered the Yankees parade. This one was to top it, like hands down. But just seeing them out there with their families, and then Mayor Mondami gave a great speech, when he was out there too.
Yes, he knows his Knicks history.
He did know his name. I was
As
so
someone who
impressed.
does not know Nick's history, I was
appreciated
like,
that? It was like
there's a
giving you
lot
the
of names in
full-
here that I'm
Yes.
sure are significant to a lot of people.
A lot of losing through the years as well.
And you too. You went too. You took your family.
I attempted to go with my son, and we got there at 7. The Pens opened at 6, so we were late.
gosh.
We waited in line, and then there was a cutoff very close to. We did not get in, but we soaked it up. Speaking of vibes, but you're saying like you're down in Lower Manhattan, it was packed with people. So even those who didn't get in, there, Lisa Mateo on TV.
Oh goodness! All in her glory.
Yeah, no, I mean it was an incredible quantity of people, and the ticker tape was in the air.
But getting home was the biggest nightmare.
I took the ferry. I got us. Shout out to the ferry,
Yes.
which I took, and I think that was the way to go because they closed every subway station.
They did for a while, and so people were trying to navigate, figure out. Also, a shout out to Randall Williams too, who was with me covering it out there.
Our friend and colleague Randall Williams.
That had to be fun. He's so much fun.
He was so much fun. It was just like a nice time, and seeing like old friends there too in the media business was fantastic
How was
too.
Alicia Keys?
She was good. I left right before she came on, and I heard she nailed it because I watched the replay later,
All right.
like a lot of folks did. But it was just a great time. Great
It's wild
experience.
to see you didn't venture downtown.
I didn't, but I will say everywhere you went in the city, they were talking about the parade or how to get home or around the parade, given all the traffic disruptions. But the city has just been in a really good mood for the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
It's been a nice place to live.
Your dog is still wearing the jersey.
He has a World Cup jersey now.
Oh, okay.
We're transitioning.
It's a new
Team
sport.
USA.
It's
We're making it happen.
It's hard to go from the next excitement to the next thing, but
I know
the World Cup is making us do that.
It's okay. We're gonna talk a little bit more about that later in the show.
All right, fair enough. Lisa, thank you. Thanks for the reporting as well.
Thanks, Lisa.
We're coming up on 8 a.m. in New York City.
That's right. The next hour of Bloomberg This Weekend starts right now. Stick with us.
Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend, live from New York with David Gura, Christina Ruffini, and Lisa Mateo. The latest headlines, key analysis, big interviews, and the stories that hit home on your days off.
Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend. It is 8 a.m. in New York City on June the 20th from Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York. I'm David Gura.
I'm Christina Ruffini with Lisa Mateo. We are bringing you the latest breaking news reports, analysis, and we are live this morning and every weekend from 7 to 10 a.m. We're going to get started right away. We're going to go back to Lisa Mateo with the headlines.
You got a potential setback for President Donald Trump's efforts to end the war and curb Tehran's nuclear program. Iran delayed the start of negotiations over a permanent peace deal with the U.S. after fighting intensified in southern Lebanon. The talks were supposed to take place Friday in Switzerland. Israel and Hezbollah later agreed to a ceasefire, but according to a post on X from the Lebanese army, Israeli attacks on Lebanon are ongoing. Now, it comes just days after the signing of a memorandum with the U.S. and Iran that opens a 2-month window for negotiations. Now, during the unveiling of a new Air Force One at Joint Base Andrews yesterday, President Trump expressed optimism talks would be successful.
It's 60 days. They have to make a deal. Otherwise, we will do things that won't make them happy, but I don't think it's going to get to that. I think it's going to be very good. Remember, if we do that, then all of a sudden you're not going to have the oil flowing out of the Strait too quickly, because people that own billion-dollar ships don't love missiles flying over them, don't love mines all over the water.
Well, there's still no indication of a new start date for discussions. Axios reporting the U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff headed to Switzerland, and Trump's envoy Jared Kushner are already there. Iran's foreign minister is also reportedly planning to travel to Switzerland. In the U.K., one person dead, nearly 90 injured after 2 passenger trains collided. British Transport Police say it happened last night in the Bedford area north of London. The National Union of Rail, Maritime and Transport Workers, well, they say the person who was killed was a train driver. In other news, the U.S. men's soccer team, well, they have guaranteed themselves a spot in the knockout round after defeating Australia 2-0, and they did it without their star player, Christian Ballistic, who is injured. Now, it's the team's 2nd straight victory in the expanded tournament. And the new Obama Presidential Center in Chicago officially opened its doors yesterday. The first 100 visitors, well, they received a special treat, a surprise greeting from former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama. This young woman, she was overcome with emotion.
Meeting the Obamas was just the cherry on the top, because it's like he made history. Now we get to be a part of that history, and I very, very, very adore that. I'm so happy to be a part of this.
Now, the Juneteenth opening, it followed a star-studded dedication ceremony on Thursday where the Obamas spoke to an audience that included former presidents and first ladies, as well as a number of A-list celebrities, musicians, and also some athletes as well.
The Obamalisk, as it's being called.
Yes. It's a big show, though. I mean, that was a big event, and
a lot of people there.
Yes.
Quite a production.
A lot of music.
Seemed like a joyful event.
Yes, absolutely.
Nice. We love a library.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa. All right, this morning, at least 5 people are dead after Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon. Fighting that is straining the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. There are broader impacts. Lebanon is a major issue that's threatening to derail the preliminary deal between the U.S. and Iran. Here's what President Trump says about his relationship with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
If it weren't for Donald Trump, Israel would have been eviscerated.
Your relationship with Netanyahu's?
It's good, but we have to keep him a little bit sane.
Are you going to be able to control Israel from attacking Lebanon?
Yeah, I will be. I mean, I wonder. They have a lot of respect for me, and they do as I say.
Vice President J.D. Vance did not travel to Switzerland as planned for a new round of talks amid the fighting. And this morning, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff reportedly heading there, set to meet with Jared Kushner. And Axios saying Iran's foreign minister is also planning on going today, but notes those plans could change. Bloomberg News Jerusalem reporter Dan Williams joins us now live. Dan, great to speak with you. And let's talk a bit about the strikes, what has derailed the start of these talks, and that happening while the 60-day clock has begun ticking down. The Wall Street Journal characterizing them as one of the most serious escalations in Lebanon since the ceasefire in April. Just tell us what we know about them and what guarantees, if any, we have here that this is not going to continue such that it would postpone these talks even further.
I think that characterization is fair. The great historical irony here is that while the overarching purpose of the U.S. president is in reopening the Strait of Hormuz, restabilizing energy markets, really the success of this deal, success of long-term diplomacy, will depend on a 6-mile deep stretch of now depopulated Lebanese soil where the Israelis have set up what they call a security zone to prevent Hezbollah from menacing their northern communities. That's what it's coming down to. As you noted, over the last 2 2 days, there's been a surge of violence in Lebanon, of fighting. In addition to the 5 fatalities today, you had several dozen listed yesterday from what Israel called attacks on Hezbollah targets as deep as the Bekaa Valley. And that followed an ambush on one of Israel's tanks that killed a regimental commander, the 3 members of his crew, conscripts. And there were also several wounded soldiers in other attacks in that security zone. The Israelis aren't backing down on this security zone, on this buffer zone, this occupation zone, if you like. For them, Hezbollah is the most immediate threat. And when I say immediate, I've been up there in years past. Sometimes you could literally gaze a few feet across the fence into the eyes of a Hezbollah member with a Hezbollah flag. I've had some conversations with them in years past. And given the October 7th experience, when Hamas basically replicated a long-threatened Hezbollah attack from the north on its border in Gaza into southern Israel, Israelis won't stand to see Hezbollah being able to do that, or even having any kind of presence near their border. The Israelis insist on staying put. The Americans are trying to square that circle by saying they've called for restraint. The Iranians, meanwhile, want Israel out of Lebanon entirely because, quite frankly, Hezbollah is their vanguard. They want to preserve what's left of Hezbollah, that important militia, and they're worried that it could be irreversibly degraded by these Israeli actions.
Dan, I want to play you some sound because as we track not just the agreement or the MOU between Iran and U.S., we're also tracking what this means for this increasingly contentious relationship between Israel and Washington. And J.D. Vance was asked about that at the end of his press briefing this week, and I want you to take a listen to what he said.
The other thing that I would say is that over the last 3 months, 2/3 of the defensive weapons that have protected your homeland have been built by American hands and paid for by American tax dollars. The problem for Israel is not Donald J. Trump. And anybody in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the President of the United States needs to wake up and smell the reality of the situation that country is in.
How was that received in Israel? Did that feel like a threat?
It was definitely a slap to the Israelis. And if you ask the vice president, he would say he was responding to a slap from the Israelis, specifically some members of the Netanyahu camp, everything from shock jocks to cabinet members who've been openly venting their pique at what they describe as a turnaround, even a betrayal by the US president. However, when you look closely at the official statements from Israel, they're always couched in language of gratitude. I think there's no doubt that Trump has been very good for Israel, perhaps without precedent. At the same time, I think Israelis are wondering with some basis whether this about face, whether this new cold shoulder, this new realpolitik from a very transactional president signals a change, a strategic change in the overall relationship between the countries. Now, you and I and many of our audience will have taken as a given the bedrock alliance between Israel and the United States. This is something that was born of the 1973 Middle East War. At the time, the US saw Israel as a kind of a vanguard, an asset against Soviet influence, US influence in the Middle East, an anchor for US influence. That has changed. Also at the time, the Holocaust was a living recent memory for many people. And also there was the rise of evangelical Christians, which also gave a religious buttress to that affection among Americans for Israel. That is changing very quickly. We're now a half century on, and it could well be that there's going to be a far more, should we say, cold-eyed approach by the Americans in terms of what the United States benefits from this, not least as, certainly under this president, the US is looking more likely to tilt to its confrontation with China, away from the Middle East. It's really not clear if Israel has much to offer in the new version of the big power confrontation there. The Israelis will be adjusting accordingly. They will look to a degree to be self-sufficient. They will also look to present their own transactional benefits to the Americans in business and high tech, in military intelligence and the like. But I think what we're seeing now is the tip of an iceberg, and what lies beneath the surface, we don't know the extent of it, but certainly what we could see is the unfurling of a major strategic chain in the relationship between these countries.
It did feel quite significant, especially for those of us who've watched this relationship diplomatically for a lot of years. All right, Dan Williams, he is our Jerusalem reporter. Thank you so much, Dan. We're going to leave it there for now, but you'll be joining us again later in the show.
Joining us now is Ali Vaez. He's the International Crisis Group's Iran Director and adjunct professor at the Walsh School of Foreign Service, at Georgetown University. And Ali, great to speak with you once again. I want to start with what you wrote recently, that this memo of understanding, memo of agreement, creates a breathing space, as you put it, in which diplomacy can try to recover from the violence that buried it. We have this vacuum vacuum now. We see the challenges in stark relief. How optimistic are you that in that vacuum, diplomacy will once again grow here over the next 60 days?
It's good to be with you. Look, I'm cautiously optimistic that this MOU will eventually find a way of surviving, simply because the alternative to it for the two main actors, the U.S. and Israel, the U.S. and Iran, are just so much less attractive. Yes, Israel is very unhappy, but at the end of the day, America has so much leverage, and I do believe that President Trump would at some point start using the leverage and not just reprimanding Prime Minister Netanyahu to bring about some kind of a ceasefire in Lebanon and try to deliver on this MOU and buy time. Now, whether this would turn into a final comprehensive nuclear agreement, that's where I'm very cynical.
I want to ask you what you think can actually be accomplished in 60 days, because again, going back to what the vice president said at his press briefing, you know, Republicans have criticized this agreement, Democrats have criticized this agreement, and the vice president pushed back hard, saying this is just a starting point. But the ending point for a lot of these individual issues, including the nuclear program, including whether or not Iran is going to get this unfreezing of funds, including traffic in the Strait, seem to be much farther out, even a chasm that is unresolvable in 60 days, if that's really the end goal. Do you think they're going to be able to resolve it? And do you think the U.S. will ultimately curtail those aspirations to be closer to what the MOU is now?
So look, I think the parties have basically prioritized the essential and deferred the substantial in this agreement. By that, I mean, what was essential was to end the war. The war had turned into a lose-lose dynamic for both Iran and the U.S. And so ending it was really in both sides' interests. Opening the Strait of Hormuz was truly essential. And of course, for your viewers, this is the critical point that, you know, we were running out of buffer that existed in the energy markets, and we would have a global economic meltdown a few weeks down the road if this standoff would have continued. In addition to the fact that there would be a global food crisis, especially in the global south, and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people would be affected by it if this situation would have continued. So that was the essential. But the substantial, what happens to the nuclear program, what happens to the stockpile of fissile material, what happens to inspections regime, what happens to sanctions relief, this $300 billion fund, all of those things have been deferred to the 60-day period. And let's be honest, it took 2.5 years, a decade ago, to reach just a nuclear deal with Iran. So we're not going to have a final deal in 60 days, but this period is renewable by mutual consent.
Ali, let's talk a bit about the money, those frozen funds, and you go back to the protests that preceded this war. So much of that was animated by the dire strait of the Iranian economy. If this rather sizable amount of money is unfrozen, if Iran can begin selling oil once again, if these sanctions are lessened, what does that mean in real terms for the Iranian people? And how much confidence do you have that were that to happen, that money is going to get to those who need it in the country?
It's one has to understand that the Iranians are starting now from a negative starting point, right? The economy was in dire straits prior to this war. The Iranian regime was struggling to keep the lights on. There was water scarcity. There was all sorts of problems which led to protests. Now, after the damage that the economy has suffered, the damage to the infrastructure, it is going to be so much more miserable for the Iranian people. And for the regime, it is one thing to survive a hot war, but it's another thing to be able to survive a cold peace. So they do need recovery and reconstruction, and that is why they insisted that there would be some asset release in phase one of this agreement. And it cannot all go to rebuild their military capabilities in support of their partners and proxies in the region, because without being able to inject some of this money into the society and rebuild, they're not going to be able to govern.
Before we let you go quickly, I do want to ask you what the U.S. should prioritize, in your opinion, when it comes to the nuclear file. They seem to have moved away from this idea that they're going to remove all the nuclear material out of the country. Now it's more conversation about mixing it down to a less weapons-grade level. Is that a better, more realistic approach, do you think, or is there a risk? I honestly don't know if they could mix it back up again at some point if politics and momentum and leadership changes.
Honestly, it doesn't matter that much because they don't have an active enrichment program right now. So whether they ship it out or they dilute it, it doesn't matter. I think the most important thing is actually to have the UN inspectors back on the ground so they can account for this material, because currently we don't know where it is. And no one has had eyes on it other than through satellites and intelligence, and there are limitations to that. But the key point I want to make is that if I were the administration, I would actually not search for a final comprehensive agreement, putting everything in the same basket, because that's hard to negotiate. It would take a very long time. I would do a series of mini deals. And the first step, I think, should be inspections.
Ali, last question from me. We're going to be focused here on what goes on in Switzerland. Let's go back to the Gulf, though, and what are you going to be watching for among Gulf nations who have been so grievously hurt by this war over the 100 days plus? Sort of, what are they going to be doing? What's diplomacy going to look like? What are their next steps in the Gulf?
So something very interesting is going to happen in the Gulf, which is that the countries that mediated this agreement, Pakistan, of course, but behind Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, these countries have realized that they can't continue with a situation in which Iran has the capability to threaten their interests or rely on the United States to provide protection for them. So they are going to engage in dialogue with Iran to see if they can start a new regional security arrangement. This is what happened in Europe 70, 80 years ago, and eventually resulted in a much better security arrangement in Europe, where countries had fought each other for centuries. And it appears that we're at the beginning of that process, which is something positive, and I think the United States and the West generally should support it.
Ali, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate that. Ali Vyas of the International Crisis Group and the Walsh School at Georgetown University, giving us that perspective on these talks, which have yet to get underway.
This Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, Saudi bloc that Ali mentioned is really something to watch. And we've been talking as these weeks progress about whether or not Gulf allies would have to take part of this into their own hands as the U.S. kind of loses interest in a way on some of those issues that are so important to the Gulf allies. And I think that's something to keep an eye on.
And I think a lot of these nations kind of wondering about how little support relatively they got from the U.S. during the course of this war, and changing their strategic tack as a result of that as well.
All right, coming up, price stability and task forces. We heard a lot about those two things from Kevin Warsh as he begins his tenure as Fed chair. Michael McKee breaks down some of the other changes we can expect. That is straight ahead, coming at you on Bloomberg This Weekend.
Oh, hello there. Just wanted to say, Primer is back. We've been scouring the frontiers of science and technology to help explain the difference between the next gold rush and whatever this thing is. And in season 2, we're upping the stakes. More danger.
Now that is some high-grade uranium mineralization.
We used to have a stable climate on this Earth. Right now, we do not.
More science.
We're pushing the envelope of technology in multiple directions: software, hardware, chemistry, physics.
The cable is like very cold.
And more CEOs that can nail the photo shoot.
Hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars are at stake.
While the problems are economic, the solutions are too.
And yes, we will be talking about AI.
There is a lot of humanoid hype out there.
But our future doesn't run on hype. It runs on innovation. Watch season 2 on all these lovely channels.
Welcome to the world of decentralized finance. Bloomberg is covering all things crypto, the people, the transactions, and the technology. Bloomberg Crypto, Tuesdays only on Bloomberg.
In case you missed it on Bloomberg Surveillance.
We should be basking in Nick's glory right now.
I think you are basking. There is quite a bit of basking.
It was just incredible.
You could feel it through the entire city.
I was there.
I mean, you're just waiting for it.
I saw Patrick Ewing. I saw everyone.
It has been an amazing moment where even a Yankees fan and a Mets fan can come together.
This is why it's so incredible for New York.
And have enthusiasm for New York City.
Everyone can coalesce around the Knicks.
Don't miss Bloomberg Surveillance live every weekday.
My old mentor, Roger Staubach, who told me when I transitioned, football will never leave you, but you need to leave it.
Wow.
Everyone has a dream, and a lot of dreams are, you know, my dream is to play football and play professional football, and you get the dream comes true, but it is going to end. And the day it ends, the day before it ends, you're one of the best in the world. Great. The next day you wake up, that's gone. What are you great at? And the truth is nothing, right? I'm not great at anything else.
I talk about it all the time, Steve, is this whole idea of it's not from penthouse to penthouse. And what I mean by that is you played for 15, 20 years and you're in the penthouse. That doesn't mean that you come to the business world and you're going to be in the penthouse. Now, you don't start on the third floor or the lobby. You actually have to start in the basement.
Technology is embedded in every aspect of our lives and laying the foundation for the future. From finance to defense, AI to entertainment, and from the road to the stars. Bloomberg brings you the latest stories from the people and companies pushing the tech sector to new frontiers and the politics that shape global tech markets. I'm Annabelle Drulers in Hong Kong. I'm Sherian in Tokyo. Watch Bloomberg Tech Asia. New episode Friday, only on Bloomberg Television.
Making money isn't about drowning in emotions. It's about understanding what's actually happening. Markets are the best way to glean signal from noise, and that is what we try to do every morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Thank you for joining us live on Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm Lisa Mateo. Let's update you on today's top stories. The cleanup continues in parts of Mississippi after the remnants of Tropical Storm Arthur flooded roads and knocked down trees. Arthur was the first tropical storm of the season in the Atlantic Basin. It was quickly downgraded within a day of forming, but the lingering system, well, it caused drenching rain and strong winds in Louisiana and Mississippi. Nearly 1,700 tourists were evacuated from a luxury resort in the Dominican Republic after a deadly fire. Local media reported one Italian tourist died. Several others were injured. Guests of the Viva Dominicus Beach by Wyndham Resort, well, they were transported to other hotels and nearby housing facilities. The cause of the blaze still under investigation. In company news, Starbucks has laid off corporate workers in the London and Hong Kong hubs that oversee parts of its international business. Sources tell Bloomberg the company cut off about 20% of its staff, or approximately 60 positions in Hong Kong, the office, and eliminated about 120 positions in its London area. Starbucks is moving away from running those stores outside of North America, giving licensees more control over the business. And AbbVie is nearing a deal to buy Apogee Therapeutics for almost $11 billion. The Financial Times says the all-cash deal will help boost the company's anti-inflammatory portfolio. David and Christina.
Lisa, thank you very much.
Thanks, Lisa.
Kevin Warsh delivered his first press conference as Fed chair this week after the central bank once again voted to hold interest rates steady, despite inflation running at a 3-year high.
We recognize that inflation has been running well ahead of the Fed's long-stated inflation goal of 2%. That's been going on for more than 5 years. Persistently high prices are a burden for the American people. But the recent past need not be prologue. I am pleased to report that members of the FOMC are unambiguous and unanimous. This committee will deliver price stability.
While Warsh did lay out some direction on policy, we may not be hearing from him as often as we did his predecessors moving forward. We talked to Bloomberg's international economics and policy correspondent Michael McKee about the changes coming our way.
What we've seen since the first of the year is each meeting more and more members join the side of maybe we need to raise interest rates. And he came out and said very strongly that this committee will get to the inflation target, will get to price stability.
That's at 2%.
That 2% target. And so he's really aligned himself with that idea. And what's happened over the last couple of months is people have started to get into the feeling that we're going in the wrong direction with inflation much more rapidly because of the war and because of energy prices, but it's also still out there in other prices. And we haven't hit our 2% target in 5 years. And that's our job, so we better do it. And so I think he doesn't have to manage it so much as keep it on track if necessary, and then take the blows from the White House if they have to do that.
He talked about task forces. He said he's setting up these different task forces to address a couple different issues. And we've got a collection of the number of times that he said that.
I'm appointing a task force in each of 5 areas. You'll hear quite a bit more about these task forces. That'll be taken up by the task force. We've got a task force for that. The good news for you is we have a task force for that. We have a task force on that too. I've been on a task force or two in my life. It's one of the things we have a task force to do.
But you've got one that's going to study Fed communications, one that's going to review the Fed balance sheet, one that's going to examine the data sources the Fed uses to make these decisions, and another focus on productivity and jobs. Are these providing cover for war should he need to make changes or go in a direction that the president doesn't love?
Well, you could call it cover. It's an old Washington thing. You come to town and you want to make changes, and so you appoint a commission, which kind of kicks things down the road when you don't necessarily have agreement. Now, he's just starting out. Some of those areas there's agreement on. I think they will make changes to the summary of economic projections and the dot plot. I asked him about the dot plot. I was one of the people that he said there's a task force for you, too. They will reach some accommodation on that, and they know they need to do something about the balance sheet. The idea of QE, they came into it accidentally. It worked. They did it again under COVID. But they never really formalized the process of when do we use this and how do we get out of it. And so they know they need to do that. Some of the others, I'm not sure about. Looking at AI, nobody really knows what's going to happen with that. So I'm not sure you can reach a conclusion. And the issue of the statistical agencies and government statistics, the Fed does some of that, but it doesn't do a lot. Most of that's produced by other agencies who've seen their budgets cut a lot, so they're not doing as good a job. So yeah, you could sympathize with the Fed's view on that, but unless they go in the basement and print some more money for those government agencies, I don't know exactly how you fix that.
Did the data part of that raise any concerns with you? I mean, I've also covered Washington for a long time, and I just always think of, if you torture the numbers long enough, they will confess. There's no, I mean, this isn't malfeasance necessarily, right? They're not like trying to get a different way to analyze this more in fitting with what the White House wants to see rather than what reality is happening.
No, they actually want to just improve the statistics because there's a couple of problems. One, there's always a margin of error. It's like a political poll, but there's always a confidence bound. And then that has gotten a little wider in some cases because they can't survey as many people, because their budgets have been cut. And they've had to drop a number of series. So there's a problem with some of the data. It's as accurate as it can be. It's the gold standard for the world, but it could be better. The other problem is that it's backward looking. It's always telling you what happened a month ago, or in some cases 2 months ago. And Kevin Warsh and others say, well, we've got all of these systems now that provide real-time data. We should get real-time data too. They do get real-time data, and they get a lot of it. But I guess what he's looking to do is kind of systematize it, work it into Fed models so that they're not just using the backward-looking data, and try to make decisions based on more contemporaneous information.
I mean, there's a little bit of irony there because, yes, contemporary data, but when it came to forward guidance, Warsh kind of struck that from his statement. And you mentioned your question about the dot plot. We've got that for you here. We're going to play it.
I reviewed the dot plots, and when I saw the submissions, I noted that all the submissions were coming in with pencils, those kind with the big erasers. That's to say that I think my colleagues around the table, when they submitted their dots, understand the world is changing quite quickly. And they didn't feel bound by them 6 weeks from now or 6 days from now in the event that their circumstances change.
Explain to folks what these dot plots are, why they matter, and what this means for how the Fed functions and how the Fed communicates.
Well, the problem is there's a great misunderstanding about what the dots are. All of the members of the Open Market Committee submit their economic forecasts for GDP, for inflation, for unemployment. And then the question is asked, once they've done that, what would be the Fed funds rate, the benchmark lending rate under those circumstances?
Yeah.
They get 19 different answers, or in this case, 18 because Kevin Warsh doesn't want to put in a dot.
That's right.
And the market thinks of them, because we report, while the median dot is X, the market thinks that's the Fed's plan and that's what they're going to do. They do this 4 times a year, and markets reprice minute to minute, and the Fed doesn't update these except quarterly. So you get these arguments about the Fed being behind the curve and we can't trust what they're saying and things like that. So they know the dot plot doesn't really work the way they want it to. The question is, are they going to get rid of it? And if so, do they need something to replace it? That's something that task force will work on. My question was more about, he doesn't like forward guidance, and he doesn't.
Right, he talks about, like, in this climate, it's just not really worth the paper it's written on.
He doesn't want to guide markets anymore. He wants them to guide the Fed. But they put out a dot plot with 9 people saying we're going to raise interest rates, and, well, what happened in the markets? Of course, the markets took that and ran with it. Yeah. Of course, they're going to raise interest rates. So it shows, again, a weakness in the dot plot that maybe that starkly illustrated to him reasons they've got to change it or get rid of it.
This all ties into a possible change in how the Fed communicates all of the things, including the dot plot, and you asked about that as well.
What is your feeling about these news conferences? Are you going to continue one after every meeting? Do you find them useful? What is the future for the way Kevin Warsh will communicate?
I had a great old mentor named George Shultz, and his mantra was press conferences are useful, but when you have one, you want to make sure you have something important to say. Today, I think we had something important to say about our commitment to deliver on price stability, our commitment to rethink practices with an eye of moving the Fed forward, and to give you and the American people a sense that these aren't idle thoughts, these are concrete thoughts, that we're going to seek out the best minds.
All right, so the committee's meeting again in 6 weeks. Do you think we hear from Warsh, especially if they do decide to raise interest rates? Is this kind of cover for him to just drop a statement and say, well, that's our policy, and not have to stand in front of the cameras?
Well, I think if they changed interest rates, that would fall under his important have something to say.
Do you think you would hear from
criteria.
him?
You would hear from him. I don't know how you can not hear from him. This is a genie that's out of the bottle. The markets have gotten used to it, and the Fed chair doesn't say much usually during the intermeeting periods. All the rest of the Fed does. So it's people's chance to see what he thinks is going to happen, and then they have something to measure it by. The problem, if you wanted to do press conferences only when you have something to say, because you don't want to lead the markets, is how do you announce that you're going to have a press conference without leading the markets?
That's true, because then it's an even bigger thing and everybody's going to spook, right?
If they call us up and say, well, you should bring your TV cameras over this time, then everybody's going to know that they've made a decision and they probably moved interest rates or something like that. So I don't know exactly how that's going to work. And I think there are enough arguments for the clarity and the information that the chair can provide about what happened in the meeting and about any changes they want to make in their policies and things like that, that the press conferences will be hard to get rid of.
You and I were also on standby on Thursday for Supreme Court decisions, and one of the big ones we were waiting for and still haven't gotten is Lisa Cook, and whether or not she's going to be able to keep her job. That's gone all the way up to the Supreme Court. Walk us through those arguments and what you think the impact will be on the Fed one way or the other.
That's the basic question. Can she keep her job while she is litigating this? But the overarching question that makes this more important is, of course, the president has made it clear he has no love for Jay Powell, and he would like to fire the Fed chair, and he has been talked out of it for his first term and his second term so far by aides who've said, well, you can't do that because you can only fire them for cause, and we don't have cause. Not doing what you want on interest rates is not cause. So if the court were to rule she could be fired, then you would probably assume that he would fire Jay Powell. Powell is no longer the chair, but he is still a governor, and the president doesn't like him. And you could then raise that argument of, can any president fire any chair or any member of the board if they come up with a pretext because they don't like their interest rate policies? And that's what the fight is about. The president argues he can. The Fed argues strongly that he can't. And the court seems skeptical of the idea that he can.
Maybe you have a new job as a Supreme Court reporter when you're done with the Fed, because you don't have enough to do. Mike P., thank you so much. So Mike and I were both on standby this week for the Lisa Cook decision to see if it came down. We're waiting for that still. We're waiting for birthright citizenship. Still waiting. It's a huge
list of orders we're waiting, like 20 of them, I think, in a pretty limited window here before the end of the term.
So our colleagues were telling me, I knew that they run the decisions out, but I didn't realize they still do that, even though they post them online. You
literally
can get
run them.
Yeah, you have to run them from the office, and they bring them out in boxes, and they can tell by how many boxes get delivered how many decisions are going to come down.
Interesting.
So we'll have to see.
Many a reporter started out as an intern at the Supreme Court doing that run.
Running the interns.
All right, coming up here, the new push for a new industrial revolution within the U.S. military is stretched around the world. We're going to go inside the push for Made in America when it comes to national security. That's coming up on Bloomberg This Weekend on Bloomberg TV, radio, Bloomberg.com, and the Bloomberg Business app.
Trading day is about to start.
And you're already looking for that edge.
The opening trade brings you everything you need to know as markets open across Europe.
I'm Guy Johnson.
I'm Anna Edwards.
And I'm Tom McKenzie.
This is your opening trade.
Only on Bloomberg.
Next week on Leaders with me, Francine Lacqua. I speak to the outgoing chief executive of BHP, Mike Henry, about his do's and don'ts for making deals.
You don't want to be setting strategy in the middle of a transaction.
Changes he made at BHP.
We needed to make sure that we had a portfolio that was fit for the future.
And how to ensure smooth leadership transitions.
Day one, succession starts now.
So tune into the podcast version of Leaders with Francine Lacqua. Listen and watch on Bloomberg Television or wherever you get your podcasts.
When news breaks,
a redhead across the Bloomberg terminal.
Bloomberg has you covered.
Trump's global tariffs are struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court.
For all the context and clarity you need.
There's going to be now tons of tariff headlines until midterm elections.
Hear it first on Bloomberg.
Africa, a region rife with potential for growth and opportunities, but not without its challenges. Join us as we get to the heart of African business, politics, and economics, and ask the question, what's next? On this episode,
Ebola can be a risk for all of us. The solution is not to close borders. The solution is to provide sufficient support.
Premieres June 26th, only on Bloomberg.
As an exchange, what can you do to make it more attractive to be a publicly traded company?
Talk to our customers. We spend a lot of time with our listed companies, listening to their concerns, and then act as an advocacy group for those companies to allow a company to tell their story in the most efficient way possible and reward them for the good disclosures that they are making in the market.
Is there any sort of financial innovation that you could drive to get more companies to list? Tokenization has come up.
Well, we did announce our tokenization initiative earlier this year. We already built the technology, we've already done a variety of proof of concepts. It allows for instantaneous settlement 24/7, but it is going to be a platform that runs in parallel to our more traditional exchanges.
From the world of politics to the world of business, Joe Matthew and Kaylee Lines deliver news, insight, and analysis live 2 times a day, every trading day. Balance of Power at 1 and 5 Eastern, only on Bloomberg.
Asia is at the forefront of some of the world's biggest stories.
And we're here, where the action starts in Sydney.
And in Tokyo, get ahead as the global trading day begins.
The Asia Trade, weekdays only on Bloomberg.
Anything we do in Africa is going to be more risky than the U.S. I think the approach we want to take is, how are we being compensated for that risk? And one of those is obviously going to be a valuation question. In our minds, valuation is a lot more attractive in Africa, even if we adjust for some of those Africa risks that a lot of Western investors see. So yes, in a lot of ways, you take some of those models that, as I said, might be more asset medium or asset heavy. There might be some more inherent risks. However, if we're saying we're adding some risk because of that kind of model, but we're now solving a core problem as opposed to maybe a nice to have solution in Africa, that might actually offset it. Where if you're solving something that people really absolutely need and can't live without, in a way that then that's a lot less risky. So again, we'd encourage investors to have a less binary view. In other words, the US isn't risky, Africa is risky. That's going to lead to a lot of complications down the road.
In case you missed it on Bloomberg Tech Asia.
Humanoids are particularly interesting for many reasons. One is that they can actually go into regular everyday environments, which were designed for humans. The other reason from the machine learning perspective is that humanoids have the shape of humans. So perhaps we can learn from humans doing different tasks and transfer that onto humanoids.
Don't miss Bloomberg Tech Asia every month.
Thank you for joining us live on Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm Lisa Mateo. Let's update you on today's top stories. In honor of Juneteenth, the Opal Walk for Freedom was held in Fort Worth, Texas yesterday. The 2.5-mile walk represents 2.5 years it took for news of the Emancipation Proclamation to reach enslaved people in Galveston in 1865. Now, Opal Lee, she led advocacy efforts to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. Attendees, they praised her accomplishments.
I feel grateful, honored, and blessed. This is my first Juneteenth celebration in SIS right here in Opal Lee's hometown, so I'm grateful.
Opal Lee will turn 100 years old in October. In sports, the U.S. Open continues at Shinnecock Hills Golf Club in Southampton. Topping the leaderboard is Wyndham Clark at 7 under par, followed by a number of players tied at 3 under par, including Sam Stevens and Tom Kim. In World Cup action yesterday, the U.S. topped Australia 2-0 and guaranteed themselves a spot in the knockout round after Paraguay, well, they topped Turkey 1-0. Morocco defeated Scotland 1-0, and Brazil topped Haiti 3-0. Today, more action. The Netherlands take on Sweden, Germany battles Ivory Coast, and Ecuador plays Curacao. Meanwhile, World Cup games, well, they're minting big prediction winners and million-dollar losers with over $5 billion traded across Polymarket and Kalshi. One big loss, well, that included a bet gone wrong on Belgium to beat Egypt. That cost one Polymarket user nearly $9 million.
$9 million.
That's gotta hurt.
Unless a lot of money.
You have so much money, it doesn't make a dent.
I do feel like if you're putting up $9 million on a wager, I'm assuming you have more of those millions. But having none myself, I wouldn't know. So, all right.
Thank you, Lisa. This week, industrial executives, White House officials, and big investors met in Detroit for the Reindustrialize Summit, which has a simple stated goal: making things in America. Speakers hammered home the idea that industrial power feeds military power, feeds global power.
For too long, too many people, including on my side of the aisle, told us that we no longer needed to make things here, that trade would turn our enemies into friends, that cheap imports were a substitute for national strength. But great nations do not merely consume. Great nations create. As Secretary of State, I see this every day. Foreign policy is not just summits and speeches. Foreign policy is real power exerting itself upon the world. And power is the ability to act, to build, to create, to do so on one's own terms without asking permission.
Colin Demarest is at Axios, where he covers the future of defense, and he was in Detroit this week. He joins us now. Colin, it's so nice to see you. I think the first time we met, you were literally standing in front of a giant drone at one of these defense forums. Talk to us.
That is correct.
Talk to us about this one. There are like 3 causes that they're rallying around, right? Improving American production scale and speed, fostering the stateside build, baby, build culture, and reestablishing supply chain sovereignty. Did any of those really rise to the front of the pack, and why now?
I think you lifted that from my newsletter, so thank you in the first place. But I think
we read your stuff, buddy. We read your stuff.
Yeah, okay, perfect. I think all 3 of those were addressed over the 2 days in Detroit. But I think really what the movement or the conference really boils down to is you can have a gun, but if you don't have bullets, what's the gun worth? Like you need to be able to build things for deterrence to work. You need to have these drones, these shells, these missiles. For someone to believe that the military is strong, you have to back it up through production. And I think that came through very strong earlier this month.
Colin, talk about the moment that we're in right now. We're in this kind of 60-day period as these negotiations take place, or are slated to take place in Switzerland. But a lot of the commentary surrounding the U.S. arsenal is we've depleted a lot on this war over the last 100+ days. How much was that kind of resonant as you talked to people at this conference, just about the way that this conflict has reframed the way that the Pentagon looks at its weapons supply?
I think the people in Detroit saw it as evidence that they're on the right track, right? If you look at a CSIS study that just came out, it said some of America's most important interceptors would take 3 years to replenish. So the people on the ground in Detroit, I think, took this as a vote of confidence that they're doing the right thing, that they're trying to rebuild these factories, trying to rebuild these supply lines to replenish the U.S. stockpiles in a moment like this.
And I think you actually asked our ambassador to the UN, Mike Wells, about that ammo shortage. I think we've got the sound for you.
The world also knows when we are low on munitions. They know when we've lost our industrial capacity. I'm not going to get in. I'm not going to get in on that, but it's not where it should be, right? And so the real strength of the United States isn't necessarily our military, it's our economy, and it's that arsenal of democracy.
When you look at private sector interest, are private sector entities investing in this idea? Are they interested in helping make this happen? Is it something that they see an economic future and benefit in?
Yeah, I think we're seeing just an incredible flood of private capital going into the defense industry right now, especially at the defense tech angle. These smaller companies, these startups who are kind of grappling and wrestling with maybe the older primes like the Lockheeds and the Northrops, but increasingly as well, they're working together. And so I think there's a bit of a community developing here, and there's certainly a lot of money. I know earlier you guys were mentioning $9 million lost on a bet. $9 million in this community right now is really nothing at all.
This show is starting to make me feel very broke, guys, but that's fine. We'll move on.
Colin, we were watching what unfolded in Evian last week. We had the president of Ukraine there talking with leaders from Europe and the U.S. as well. And a point that he's made to all of them, I think, and to leaders in the Middle East is that Ukraine's success, such as it's had success over the course of this war that it's engaged in, is by virtue of thinking entrepreneurially about the kind of weapons it uses, relying on drones more, using technology that's effectively a lot less expensive than what the U.S. historically has been relying on. Talk a bit about that pivot point as well, if you would, and how that's kind of shaping the conversation. You mentioned the primes historically have built big, expensive weapons. Is the shift starting to affect them as well?
I think the shift is starting to affect them. Maybe it's how quickly they produce something or the cost of something they produce. But I also would hazard to say we're going to need tanks and aircraft carriers and F-35s and the like for a very long time. We still have the F-47 in production with Boeing. We have, or being developed by Boeing, excuse me. We have F/A-XX in the running. That said, though, Ukraine's success is honestly incredible. They've really flipped warfare on its head, I would say. The use of these cheap drones worldwide is just, I don't think there's a going back to a point prior to this.
Talk to us a little bit about long-term goals, because when you are looking at these bigger, industrial base projects, they take multiple years, and it's going to take a long time to get this up and running. How concerned are these investors, are these private sector entities that, yes, this is an administration that's very supportive of that, but political uncertainty could change that. The economy could change that. Is there a concern that the U.S. is able to be less competitive with long-term goals than someone like China, who has the ability to plan out decades in advance due to they know who their president is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I think reindustrializes biggest Achilles heel is how long this will take. I mean, I talk to people to reindustrialize America entirely might take 20, 30 years. That's a lot of elections. Yeah. That's a lot of potential wars. That's a lot of boom and bust cycles. And investors definitely have this question of like, where is my money? The Department of Defense works on very long return cycles. And I think that is definitely something to keep an eye on.
Colin, before we let you go, just give us a sense of who was at this conference. You speaking there, of course, to the U.S. ambassador to the UN, but in terms of government participants, corporate participants, kind of what was the mix there in Detroit?
I described it as a motley crew in the newsletter you guys read. It's really an interesting crowd. It's graphic designers. It is the primes. It's the startups. It's missile makers, car makers. There's a really wide range of people there at Reindustrialize. And last year, I think my favorite phrase that I used was Palantir protesters in front of the Gucci store. And I think that's the perfect summation.
We're going to leave it there. How can we top that?
All right. Well, if you want more, he does have a newsletter.
Yes,
we highly endorse it here at Bloomberg.
Colin Demarest, thank you very much. Appreciate you bringing us that perspective from that conference that took place in Detroit. And I want to hear more about when you met him in front of this drone. I mean, these conferences are wild. I mean, they're very
This was in the middle of D.C. It was right across Anacostia. It was like next to an elementary school. And you walk into this ballroom and there's a drone. I mean, we have like a 2-level studio here. It was like a 40-foot drone just hanging out in the middle of a ballroom that people could just go and touch and see, because this is the technology that almost everybody is moving towards. You have these lightweight, tiny drones, but then you also have a sector that's trying to make these much bigger, almost autonomous aircraft.
What a Washington scene you've described. Next to the elementary school.
It was peak DC.
Two-story
Peak DC,
drone.
let me tell you. All right, we're going to talk about peak sports next, and that's the World Cup bringing nations together in some very unlikely places. We will speak with a Kansas mayor whose town is embracing itself as Lawrence of Algeria and rolling out the red, green, and white carpet. Stick with us.
In case you missed it on Bloomberg Insight.
When I say fair taxes, fair share, what do they mean? Like, I agree with the fact, if it were up to me, I saw Jeff Bezos, who I love, swashbuckling. I don't think the lower people make it under a certain amount have to pay any taxes at all. And that's what people seem to want. They think that somehow being anti-business is going to help a city. It's not. So we all want to pay fair taxes. That's not the point. New York's booming, so you're not going to see it in this year's taxes, but a lot of people are paying billions of dollars taxes left. Why do you want that? How does that help the lower paid person in New York?
So what do you make of the beef Mamdani has with Ken Griffin? I mean, there's been a lot of pushback as well from...
My view is, I think vilifying people, simplifying arguments, even if you think it's politically is a bad idea. And I think he probably realizes that was a bad idea. It's probably why he's seen a bunch of us now.
Don't miss Bloomberg Insight live weekdays.
Mind being called an ideological lunatic or a bunch of left-wing nut jobs?
I've been called worse things than that.
23andMe, I think, is so incredibly valuable. We're coming back.
What magazines were you reading as a kid?
I don't think I was reading magazines until I was in them.
So is it Paradise Ahead or Gattaca?
Maybe somewhere in the middle.
What was it like starting all over again? One day you're in a big company, with a big parent, and then you have to start all over again.
It was really exciting and invigorating. I felt like a young kid again when I started Jones Road. And right before we launched, I definitely had a sudden emotion of saying, uh-oh, what if I'm a one-hit wonder? I was a little scared, but then I just threw it up into the wind and went for it.
Jones Road, where'd that name come from?
Well, I sold the rights to Bobby Brown to Estee Lauder when we sold the company, so I couldn't use it again. So we needed a name because I wanted to launch Jones Road the day my 25-year non-compete was up. I needed a name, and I didn't have one. And I was driving to the Hamptons with my husband. My head was down on Waze, and I looked down, I saw Jones Road, and I said, Jones Road Beauty. He said, I like it. And that's how it became Jones Road.
Technology is embedded in every aspect of our lives, and that revolution is playing out in real time. From finance to defense tech, AI to entertainment, from the road to the stars. Bloomberg is bringing you the stories of companies and people that are pushing tech to new frontiers, and the politics reshaping global tech markets. I'm Ed Ludlow, live in San Francisco, and this is Bloomberg Tech.
Every weekday, only on Bloomberg Television.
Welcome back to Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm David Gura, alongside Christina Ruffini. With the 2026 FIFA World Cup underway, one story has captured the hearts and minds of soccer fans all over the world. Lawrence, Kansas, a city with a population of 100,000, has been a host to the Algerian national team, and with that, the citizens of Lawrence have embraced every second of it.
From attending events at the University of Kansas to partying in the streets of Lawrence, World Cup fever has taken over. Joining us now to talk about it is the mayor of Lawrence, Kansas, Brad Finkelstein. Brad, I have been living for this story from day one, since I saw the first soundbite, which I think we have, of one of your residents being interviewed by Algerian TV, asking what he thought of everything. I think we're going to play it for you.
I want to say thank you to Team Algeria for choosing our hometown, Lawrence, Kansas, to come here. And so welcome. Welcome to United States. Welcome to Kansas.
How did this happen? Did they choose you? Did you choose them? How did this go down?
No, they chose us. After they got selected into the Group J, which was in Kansas City, they had 2 games in Kansas City. And so they could have chosen Kansas City or Lawrence, but they chose, well, a little bit outside of Kansas City, and they chose us. And it's been a match made in heaven.
Talk a bit about that, Mayor, if you would, sort of what that match has looked like. Christina alluding to the fact there's been partying in the streets and a lot of warmth for this visiting team. What has it looked like in real terms over the last few weeks?
Our goal when they came was, to make them feel at home, make them feel welcome. But the exciting part is that they reciprocated that right away. And it's just been a natural connection. Their fans showed up. Their fans are, like you said, dancing in the streets and playing the music. And our citizens have been meeting with them. And so we've had parties. We've had open practices just in between games down on our, what we call Massachusetts Street, our downtown street. It's just interactions galore, and it's been a great time.
I think we've got some sound from another fan saying they seem to be liking and learning a little bit of Algerian culture as these two countries kind of collide in your downtown.
Very friendly. I like your music. I like your drum. Yeah, it's beautiful.
With the traditional dishes.
I haven't had any food yet. So if somebody wants to give me a taste, I really like that.
All right, my mistake. So that was our same gentleman. But, I've been watching. I think the algorithm has figured me out because now I'm getting so much Lawrence, Kansas content. But I've seen people bringing baked goods to the hotel where they're staying. I've seen Kansas residents stopping to dance with Algerian bands. I've seen kids wearing Algerian jerseys. And also, there's a chant that everybody is saying. I don't know if you want to do it for us, so I don't have to do it for you. But it seems like everyone is learning a little tiny bit of French there. What are your favorite moments been so far?
The open practice was great. Obviously the team is here and they're focused on winning some games. So that was the one chance we've had to interact with the team and to watch them work with our young soccer players on the field. They were so nice and generous with their time. That was a great interaction with the team. That's been one of my favorite moments. We had a big watch party, obviously, for the Argentina game, and although the game did not come out like we wanted, it was great to see all the fans together cheering for a game. Being from the University of Kansas and in Lawrence, we're used to cheering for sporting events, but to do that with an international crowd was so exciting. And we really think Monday night for their game is going to be a large watch party because Algeria will be in San Francisco actually playing the game. And so we think all the fans will join us in Lawrence on our main street with a big TV outside cheering them on. We think we'll have thousands of Algerian and Lawrence fans hoping for a big win.
Seeing the Jayhawk there, greeting some young fans. He's playing a role in all of this as well. For those who haven't been following this, know that this is such a wide geography. The fact that this tournament's being played in Mexico, the United States, and in Canada. As you mentioned, the next game is in California. Look, this is a kind of interesting tournament that there wasn't any infrastructure kind of built for it. No new stadiums for this World Cup. So just explain sort of what life is like for a team like Algeria's in a place like Lawrence. As you say, you have the university there. You have facilities, and that very much was kind of the thinking behind this World Cup, that you should take advantage of kind of extant infrastructure that's in place around this country and Mexico and Canada as well.
Yeah, that's right. We have at the University of Kansas, they have a women's soccer team. We have a women's soccer team and have a very state-of-the-art facility. And that certainly attracted FIFA for whoever team wanted to come. They have a great place to practice and all the things you need to go along with it. Obviously, I do think we're certainly one of the smaller communities. And so although we've embraced them, they don't have to worry about traffic. They don't have to worry about, a bunch of different things you have to worry about in big cities. It's a little slower pace. And I think the Algerians like that. They don't really, the team itself does not want a lot of public events. And because they're focused on winning the game. So it's been a good community for them to be at. But then with all the facilities at KU, including the training facilities, the food facilities, it's been a great match for their soccer team.
Someone online wrote something along the lines of, in the end, it's very fitting that the best American ambassadors are not, in fact, politicians, but the American people themselves. Mayor Finkelstein, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone in your community for making us all look good. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
All right, and you can check out your standings on the Bloomberg World Cup Bracket Challenge. Just type in BRAKT GO.
BRKT GO. Lisa Mateo doing this. You're not doing it. I am doing it, and I just want to point out, because I'm so fond of putting myself up against each of you, I'm doing woefully just woefully.
Lisa's doing exceedingly
Lisa, I think, is
well.
like top tier. You're like
My
number
score is like
300.
38, okay?
But out of what? Out of like 4,000?
Well, that's your score, but
I don't know.
Well, I don't know.
My rank is 2,617 out of 3.
Oh, okay, she's right.
I know.
She's
You told,
right.
okay, all right.
Sorry, we were. Anyway,
We were
this is
misinformed.
fascinating.
Sorry.
I myself, in filling out this bracket, was unprepared for like how intricate it is. But like obviously there are tons of games as we get to the knockout
Seems
stage.
really hard.
Well, you didn't do it, so.
Read the top.
Sorry. All right, we're coming up at 9 o'clock here in New York City.
The next hour of Bloomberg This Weekend starts right now. Coming up on Bloomberg This Weekend, the U.S. and Iran gear up yet again for nuclear talks.
Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. They're never going to have a nuclear weapon, okay?
The sticking points, as representatives from both sides are reportedly on their way to Switzerland.
Plus, a sit-down with Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock.
Don't call me a politician. That's a dirty one. I am an elected official. I'm a public servant in politics.
What he says about Elon Musk's wealth, the president's attempt to fire Fed Governor Lisa Cook, and the state of American democracy.
We are feeling ourselves right now in the United States. We are back, baby.
Team USA moves into the knockout round of 32 at the World Cup. Hear who they'll take on next after their 2-0 win over Australia. Welcome back to Bloomberg This Weekend. We are still coming to you live from Bloomberg's world headquarters in New York. I'm Christina Ruffini.
I'm David Gura alongside Lisa Mateo. It is Saturday, June the 20th. We are watching what is unfolding or not unfolding in Switzerland this morning.
Standing by to stand by yet again this weekend as the world waits, diplomats wait, Gulf allies wait, Israel, the U.S., and Iran all wait to see what can come out of the 60-day window after this MOU expires.
We will not make you wait for the headlines. Lisa Mateo has those. Lisa.
You got it. And the U.S. men's soccer team, they have guaranteed themselves a spot in the knockout round after defeating Australia 2-0. And they did it without their star player, Christian Pulisic, who is injured. Now, it's the team's second straight victory in the expanded tournament. The U.S. then won Group D when Paraguay beat Turkey 1-0. The new Obama Presidential Center in Chicago officially opened its doors yesterday. The first 100 visitors, they received a special treat, a surprise greeting from former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama. This young woman was one of them.
When I walked past the screen door and everyone was clapping, and when they told us not to take out our phones, I was mentally prepared. I'm like, Obama has to be here. He has to be here. And then I met them, and I was literally crying. I asked for a hug and everything.
Well, the Juneteenth opening had followed a star-studded dedication ceremony Thursday where the Obamas spoke to an audience that included former presidents and first ladies, as well as a number of A-list celebrities, musicians, and athletes. The U.S. push to quickly begin high-stakes negotiation with Iran will hit a snag Friday. Talks on a permanent deal scheduled for Switzerland were delayed after Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah militants. They clashed in Lebanon. A renewed ceasefire was later agreed upon, but according to a post on X from the Lebanese army, Israeli attacks on Lebanon are ongoing. Now, despite the setback, President Trump said ships are flowing out of the Strait of Hormuz.
Actually, there were a lot of them, about 700 of them, and they're pouring out. The oil is all over the place. You're going to see oil drop so low. I hope the companies are happy about it. But we have a lot of victories.
The president was speaking during the unveiling of the new Air Force One at the Joint Andrews Base yesterday. But there's still no indication of a new start date for the discussions. Axios reporting U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is heading to Switzerland, and Trump's envoy Jared Kushner is already there. Iran's foreign minister also reportedly planning to travel to Switzerland as well. Now, meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reporting that the U.S. is working with Qatar on a plan to give Iran access to billions of dollars in frozen funds for humanitarian spending. Under the deal, Qatar would allow purchases of food, medicine, and other goods ordered by Iran's central bank. Iran has an estimated $100 billion in cash frozen worldwide. David and Christina.
Lisa, thank you very much. You've laid the groundwork for us beautifully, set the table. We're going to go now to Jerusalem reporter Dan Williams joining us again this morning. And Dan, pick up on what Lisa was talking about there. The state of play is, as you understand it, of course, what's happening in Lebanon, certainly scuttling the start of these talks in Switzerland. What's the latest that you've heard about that ceasefire, that fragile ceasefire that went in place yesterday?
Well, to judge from that news summary, it would appear that U.S. envoys, albeit not the vice president, one tier below, are headed out to Switzerland, a venue for those planned talks, as well as potentially the Iranian foreign minister. So it would appear that rather than scuppering this entire diplomacy, what we had from Iran yesterday was a shot across the bow, if you like, not a parting shot, a warning shot. It would appear that the Israelis stayed put in Lebanon. It would appear that the Americans are not yet ready to insist that the Israelis move out of Lebanon, something that would really unleash a crisis, perhaps an unprecedented crisis in recent years between the allies. So I expect that in the coming hours, perhaps by the close of the weekend, those talks in Lucerne will have started out at some level.
Dan, I also want to ask you about the rhetoric. We talked when you were with us last hour about this interesting turn in the U.S.-Israeli relationship. But you also have your national security minister giving this kind of extraordinary tweet on Lebanon where he wrote, with all due respect to all of Lebanon must burn, ! With all due respect to the Americans, Israel must make clear to the entire world that the blood of our sons and security of our citizens are not forfeit. All of Lebanon must burn. That, of course, was responded to by the Iranian foreign minister, saying essentially this is not a rant by a random lunatic. You know, this is a public post by the national security of Israel's regime. Talk to us about the feelings inside the Knesset, inside Israel. Is this causing further divisions within Netanyahu's own party as to what to do following this MOU? Where do folks stand?
Well, I think the Israeli minister you cited, he's the far rightist. He's given to such rhetoric. In fact, it's come to be expected of him. And it's worth remembering that Israel's in an election year. There's an election 4 months on, so he could actually have his eye on his constituency when he makes those threats, although I think many Israelis would share that opinion. Now, if you get past the rather Baroque rhetoric, what he's referring to is Israel's delimitation when it comes to actions against Hezbollah, specifically avoiding Beirut, generally avoiding inland areas, except, you know, the Bekaa Valley, which was bombed by Israel yesterday, and restraining those attacks to Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, where Israel has created this 6-mile deep buffer zone. Some in the Israeli firmament think that shouldn't be the case. They think Hezbollah is not only undeterred, but it would have been emboldened by this MOU, which has basically been a lifeline for its sponsor in Iran, and stands to bring funding, new weaponry to Hezbollah. Hezbollah that until very recently was on the ropes in Lebanon. Indeed, within Israel, there is a great sense of shock and disappointment in this turn of events over the last week or week and a half. Trump plowing ahead, effectively trying to get the Americans, the United States, out of this war that he launched together with Israel in full concert. If I'm not mistaken, there was full parity in terms of the number of Air Force sorties carried out in Iran between Israel and the United States. But all of a sudden, in the last 2 weeks, Israel has not only not been included in those talks with Iran, it hasn't always been briefed on those talks with Iran. So the Israelis feel they've been given short shrift. They're in the Middle East. They'll remain in the Middle East. They took quite a bit of the brunt of the Iranian missiles during that attack. There were 26 people killed in Israel during that war by Iranian missiles. And yes, Israel expects a potentially generational face-off with Iran, its arch foe, and more immediately, more pressingly, with Hezbollah, which is Iran's vanguard in Lebanon. So what you have is a very delicate, very unwieldy triangulation here of these peace talks. Iran will never make peace with Israel. It doesn't even like saying the word Israel. It generally prefers to call it the Zionist entity or such like. And at the same time, the Israelis are being called upon, while not being part of the MOU, to abide by the MOU in terms of what Iran, their arch enemy, would like to see them do or not do in Lebanon. It's very unwieldy. The Israelis are basically laying down their battle lines. They're saying with bombs, with bullets, and with blood, Israeli and Lebanese blood, they're willing and they must stay in southern Lebanon for the protection of their northern communities.
Dan, quickly before we let you go, what is your latest read on the status of the relationship between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu? I should say, notably, we haven't heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu. He hasn't outwardly criticized what's happened here to the degree that his cabinet members have, be they on the far right or otherwise. What do you make of that? We heard the president saying to Axios in recent hours that he keeps Bibi sane, in his words. We had Sarah Eisen of CNBC traveling to Jerusalem, where she asked the prime minister just about the status of that relationship on the heels of a call in which he was cursed at by the president of the United States. What is your read in the minute we have left with you just of the status of that relationship?
This is extraordinarily embarrassing for Netanyahu. He's also running for re-election. He's really branded himself as not only Mr. Security for Israel, but Mr. Statecraft, especially when it comes to handling the United States, massaging U.S. public opinion, whoever's in the Oval Office. He's made very few, I think only twice appeared in public since this MOU was signed. He has also said in those statements that it's time to work on re-establishing, replenishing the U.S.-Israeli relationship. However, I think what he's really hoping for is for this to blow over, for the U.S. president to find another focus for his vitriol. It's clear that Trump feels bruised by this war in Iran. It didn't go the way he had hoped. Perhaps it didn't go the way he had been promised or reassured by Netanyahu. There is some bad blood there, clearly. However, we've seen Trump is transactional, and frankly, he can turn on a dime, including on very recent critics or subjects of his criticism. I imagine there will be a restoration of those ties. The question is whether it will be enough to salvage Netanyahu's career and his re-election prospects.
All right, Dan Williams for us in Jerusalem. Thank you so much, Dan.
So from one Dan to another, we're going to go to Dan Tenenbaum now. He's a partner with Oliver Wyman, senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Economic Statecraft Initiative, and somebody who has a host of experience when it comes to sanctions policy. And that's right where I want to go with you, Dan. Part of this memo of understanding has to do with the relaxation of sanctions that have been put in place on Iran for many years now. And I'm curious, at a very granular level, what that means, the logistics of removing those sanctions, and what it's going to mean for the Iranian economy if, in fact, that happens.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think it's important to note, obviously, Iran's been under significant sanctions for years. Some of these sanctions, including INARA, actually require congressional notification or verification. So there's a bigger question in terms of what type of sanctions relief can happen. It should be reminded to the viewers that when the JCPOA was enacted and went into effect in 2016, it took 6 months before sanctions relief kicked in. We've been hearing rumors that a general license was actually due to be released yesterday to begin allowing Iran to trade their oil without fear of consequence almost immediately. But a big part of where Iran got the short end of the stick in the JCPOA was global banks wouldn't touch Iran even once secondary sanctions were lifted and European and Asian firms could touch Iran without fear of consequence from the U.S. Hopefully they remember that, but I do think it's important to note that businesses are not clamoring to get back into Iran, and these sanctions are going to take time to be lifted ultimately.
There's also a bit of a sequencing issue here, right? Because in that MOU, there's two things. There's a potential release of funds and there's sanctions relief. Right. But if the funds were to be released before sanctions relief, those funds could only be used in line with the standing sanctions, correct? They would have to be used for humanitarian purposes and fitting within those rules.
That's correct. And there's also no guarantee that their money is good with the type of places they may want to buy humanitarian aid from. That is a bit of the challenge, is Iran is radioactive from not just a sanction standpoint, but a money laundering standpoint. And obviously the broader state of the regime makes it less desirable. The real question is that those mechanics, you've also got to remember, Iran is a state sponsor of terror, which creates a whole other bunch of sanctions-related issues that are lifted in a slightly different way. So this is not as simple as the vice president may say in simply flipping a switch and lifting things. This should be done methodically. I mean, the JCPOA took 20 months to negotiate. We're talking about a 60-day MOU that's already off to a pretty bumpy start.
So, Jen, I hadn't realized that. So there is this, group of sanctions, but you're saying even if they lift these, those, terror, supportive terror, DOJ sanctions may not be part of that? They may be a separate issue?
That's correct. So the state sponsor of terror designation is a separate regime that requires a different lifting process. And if you'll note, Syria, for instance, is still deemed a state sponsor of terror, even though we're relatively in good standing between the new Syrian government and the U.S., but they're still deemed an SST. So it's not quite that straightforward for this lifting. There's a lot of unanswered questions going forward. And will Iran comply with the terms of this? That toll-free point was only good in their eyes for 60 days of this MOU, and then they may begin charging tolls again.
Dan, help us understand how you're thinking about the efficacy of sanctions in this environment. So I know that a criticism during the Biden administration, for instance, was too many sanctions have been applied. They're losing their efficacy. They're being used too punitively. In this world in which they are removed more quickly, perhaps, than they were slapped on to begin with, what does that say about the degree to which they work, that they can compel a country to do something or another?
Look, sanctions helped force Iran to the negotiating table in 2015. I do think the efficacy of sanctions has been degraded over time. And if you look at this conflict, sanctions were largely abandoned in favor of kinetic warfare, which the president seems to be wildly supportive of. I mean, the sanctions are a little bit of a complexity here because you can take sanctions off the table. It doesn't mean businesses are going to want to touch a market. And that's a bit of the challenge that Iran needs to balance if they really are eager to re-engage in the global economy. And I'm not sure that's necessarily the top of their agenda. They're kind of a ways off. I think Senator Kennedy said it best. I mean, you'd have to be homeschooled by a day drinker to think that Iran can actually do anything here. Meaning, will they comply with the terms of this agreement like demining the Strait? I think there's a lot of pre-steps that have to happen before the sanctions can truly be lifted. But that's the question of what this administration is going to do.
Classic Kennedyism there.
100%.
Yes. His words, not mine.
Yes,
Of course. When you look at private sector reticence, even if these sanctions were nominally lifted or some of the sanctions were lifted, what are the big issues? Is it just what you were just talking about, instability and not being confident that the state of play is going to hold? Is it the Iranian currency and its negligible value on the market? Is it all of the above?
I think the simplest way, the economic plumbing isn't there. Are there correspondent banking relationships to allow free trade to occur? And the answer is no. Most global banks will not touch this business, nor do they have any interest in the near term in re-engaging with Iran. We learned this in 2015 with the JCPOA. A number of large European energy, automotive, aviation companies announced deals to re-enter the market, but they actually couldn't make good on those because they couldn't finance anything. They couldn't find a bank to actually move capital around. That's very likely what will end up happening again. The private sector is really not interested in Iran right now.
Funny thing happening now, Dan, we've got Vice President J.D. Vance on Fox News saying we're going to give this negotiation a chance. We're going to go after the enriched uranium stockpile. Then, on the other side of the screen...
And he could be leaving sometime soon.
Yes, all that update. You have Tasnim, one of the semi-official news agencies in Iran, saying the Strait of Hormuz has been closed once again. So I think speaking to what you're talking about here just a moment ago, the lack of clarity, the amount of confusion that all parties, including businesses, face here. And that's where I want to go lastly with you, if I could, Dan. What's it going to take businesses... What's it going to take for businesses to become interested in or able to do business in Iran once again? I know that the Russia parallel isn't a great one here, but there was all of this talk, a year into that conflict, that maybe the appetite was changing, and if things were to be relaxed, U.S. companies, global multinationals would be interested in getting into that market once again. What's the threshold, Dan, at which a Western company, would want to do business with Iran again?
I mean, realistically, you're talking major Western companies being out of this market for 50 years. The likelihood of an about-face in an environment where, especially in this Trump administration, the geopolitical winds can change so quickly. I know none of my larger clients that are interested in making a decision in an environment where you lack that predictability. I mean, for everything you just mentioned, I mean, we saw 7 vessels transit the Strait on Wednesday, 6 in and 1 out of the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, there really is no commerce happening here. That predictability needs to come back, and you need evidence and time to demonstrate that predictability. But I don't see businesses being interested in Iran in the foreseeable future. It's not that ripe a market, and the risks are still too great that you can end up losing out if you attempt to go in, putting capital on the ground.
All right, our second Dan of the morning, Dan Tannenbaum, who is with Oliver Wyman, and also a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council Economic Statecraft Initiative. Thank you so much.
Coming up here, my sit-down interview with the Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock. His comments on faith, on the state of democracy, and on Elon Musk. That conversation coming right ahead here on Bloomberg This Weekend, on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, Bloomberg.com, and the Bloomberg Business app. Stay with us.
In case you missed it on Bloomberg Surveillance. What is the worst Fed's response mechanism to inflation that is inflecting upward, given the fact that this Fed has been incredibly dovish? Are they going to wreck the party? I mean, ultimately, it's easy to be a skeptic, but I might as well join the party and not be so, skeptical, because you're not paid to be skeptical. You're not paid to poke holes. You are paid to just go with the mob.
Have we got that breaking news whoosh that drives across the screen? Can we play that now? Sort of breaking news.
It's the job. Come on.
Bramo, I think, going to look to confirm this, but I think Bremo just turned bullish. Is that what just happened?
I think that it just doesn't pay to be skeptical. You take a look at every single different benchmark.
Okay.
I mean, it's sort of, what are we trading people? We are trading them that you cannot lose, and that seems to be the way to go.
Bulls everywhere this morning, getting very nervous following that.
Don't miss Bloomberg Surveillance, live every weekday.
The countdown is on. Everything you need to get the edge at the end of the market day. Get ahead of tomorrow's trading with The Close. Weekdays on Bloomberg. Context changes everything.
At 9:30 a.m., the market tells you what it's really thinking.
We beat the drum to the opening bell.
With deep analysis of the forces driving the price action.
Focusing investors on what really matters.
Where the money flows, which markets are changing.
Conversations with players shaping the narrative.
Innovative growth companies gravitate to NASDAQ.
It's not just like, let's buy the Mag 7 or AI.
That's a really compelling story.
This is where your trading day begins.
And this is open interest.
Only on Bloomberg.
In case you missed it, on the opening trade.
We're holding our breath, and our economists put it very nicely in their recent research note. They're saying, for now, you got the support of tax refunds, so you had the fiscal support. This is running out right now. The real test for the consumer starts here.
How are you going to hold your breath for?
I'm holding my breath in two different ways. The first question is complicated.
Unpleasant.
Well, that's what you have to do as a market strategist. It's unpleasant, complicated, but also exciting, I would say. So we're holding our breath and saying, are you going to reopen that strait? Then secondly, if you don't reopen it, how long can you keep running down oil inventories to make up the shortfall? The equity market's pricing 90%. Prediction markets are saying it's a 30% probability that you reopen it by the end of June. And then if you don't get these supplies back soon, then within the next 3 months, you should start to see macro weakness, not just in Europe, not just in China, but also in the US.
Don't miss the opening trade, live every weekday.
In case you missed it, on the Pulse.
It's a $75 billion IPO, the largest in history. I think it presages the beginning of a pretty sizable wave of IPOs, which we're excited about. I also think it shows you that the capital markets, led by the U.S. capital markets, but the global capital markets are demonstrating a willingness to finance this AI infrastructure build and this build in space, which is quite exciting.
Don't miss the Pulse, live every weekday.
What is going to be the consequence for U.S. markets?
We are seeing modest gains across European equity markets.
Take a look at how we're faring when it comes to Asian markets.
Thanks for joining us live on Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm Lisa Mateo. Let's update you on today's top stories. And this news breaking, Iran says the Strait of Hormuz is closing, and they point to a ceasefire violation. And that's according to Iranian media. We will keep you updated as this story does develop. To the UK now, where one person is dead, nearly 90 injured. That's after two passenger trains collided. British Transport Police say it happened last night in the Bedford area north of London. The National Union of Rail, Maritime and Transport Workers, they said the person who was killed was the train driver. Nearly 1,700 tourists were evacuated from a luxury resort in the Dominican Republic after a deadly fire. Local media reported one Italian tourist died and several others were injured. Guests of the Viva Dominicus Beach by Wyndham Resort, well, they were transported to other hotels and nearby housing facilities. The cause of that blaze is still under investigation. And in Ukraine, at least one person was killed and 6 others were injured after Russian-guided bombs slammed Kharkiv, the country's second largest city. Local authorities say Russian bombs slammed into a low-rise apartment block in the early hours local time Saturday. And the cleanup continues in parts of Mississippi after the remnants of Tropical Storm Arthur flooded roads and knocked down trees. Arthur was the first tropical storm of the season in the Atlantic Basin. It was quickly downgraded within a day of forming, but the lingering system, it caused drenching rain and strong winds in Louisiana and Mississippi.
Sorry, I'm so excited.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. All right, Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock says democracy expands and contracts, and says that right now we're in a contraction moment. The Baptist pastor doesn't like to be called a politician. He prefers public servant, and he sat down with Bloomberg This Weekend and our own David Gura to talk about America as we near its 250th birthday.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. We spoke about a number of things, including Elon Musk and his $1 trillion wealth. We talked about Fed Governor Lisa Cook, who she is from Georgia. And we talked about voting rights as well. But we started off by talking about Scripture and its lessons for our national character, which he writes about in his new book, The Crooked Places Made Straight.
These are my reflections on the moral meaning of America. But Isaiah is central to that conversation. The prophet Isaiah, is so important to my own Christian faith. All the New Testament writers, all of the gospel writers in some way quote this text that I lift up. And so it's a vision for the land. I call it a moral topography, reimagining who we can be together. And he says it in the poetic language of the prophet, that every valley would be exalted, the mountains and hills made low. I use that to talk about equity, a leveling of the playing field, taking the low places, bringing them up a little bit higher in this moment of wealth inequality. And then he says the crooked places shall be made straight. And when you listen to Isaiah, this righteous anger, you see it begins even in chapter 1, where he says that your princes, thank your politicians, your princes are rebels. They are companions of thieves. Everyone chases after a bribe. They do not fight for the widows or the orphans. Isaiah could have been talking about dark money in American politics in the 21st century.
You're having this meditation on the meaning of America at a moment when I think a lot of Americans are. We're approaching the 250th birthday of this country. What does that anniversary mean to you? How do you intend to mark it?
Well, I'm a proud American. I love this country. But there is no doubt that we are going through a dark moment. There are moments in the history of our country where, quite frankly, the democracy, this grand idea of government of, by, and for the people, there are moments when the democracy expands, and then there are moments when it contracts. We're in the contraction moment. There are those who are literally trying to squeeze the voices of ordinary people out of their democracy. And people, ordinary folks, I'm not talking normal people, outside of Washington, D.C., they feel it. And they feel it on the left and on the right. They may have different perspectives on it, but this sense that something is awry, something is broken. I think people feel that.
You write about gun violence, mass incarceration, inequality is another subject in the book, something that you also talk about and preach about a lot as well. I imagine your draft was due before we learned that the world would have its first trillionaire in Elon Musk.
Yeah.
How does that change your sense of inequality, yes, in the U.S., but around the world? And indeed, how worried are you that you have an individual who's added 3 additional zeros to his net worth?
I think news of the first trillionaire in the world is not good news. I think that's bad news. It is a bright indication of growing wealth inequality in this country. I'm pro-business and I'm pro-worker. These crazy distinctions, these dichotomies that we build between the dichotomy between, being pro-worker, pro-business. Workers need a business to work in. Mm-hmm. So, but workers ought to be able to enjoy at a reasonable level the prosperity that they are creating. And what we're seeing is that in our rigged and corrupt system, where we have the best politicians that money can buy, the tax system is structured for people like Elon Musk. He's not a trillionaire by accident. This is a structural issue. This is structural inequality. If the average person in Georgia right now that I represent, who's struggling to buy groceries, for whom gas is too high, that poor working class person that needs a little bit of support, and there are those who feel like, well, they're living on the government. No, if they had the subsidies that Elon Musk has enjoyed, they'd be a billionaire too.
I want to get your perspective on the health of the U.S. economy today, and you have an informed sense of that from being a politician, talking to your constituents.
Don't call me a politician. That's a dirty word. I am an elected official. I'm a public servant in politics now.
Mea culpa. You're also on the banking committee and the finance committee. And in the book you counsel, look at GDP, don't look at the NYSE. That the stock market and the gains that we've seen give you a limited view of the health of this country today from an economic vantage. What are your thoughts on sort of how the U.S. economy is doing today?
Well, going back again, first trillionaire in the world. He's done pretty well as an immigrant, I should say, by the way. So I guess this administration doesn't have it out for all immigrants. But I think that the issue is not how well Wall Street is doing, it's how well Main Street is doing. And I'm paying close attention to the evolution of this economy. One of the things that we ought to be working on is AI. We ought to be thinking about the perils and the promises of AI. I'm very concerned about the implications for the labor market. And I think we can't just sit by passively and let it happen. We need to figure out what is the correct regulatory structure for AI, for all of these new technologies. You mentioned I'm on the banking committee, so I'm actively engaged in this conversation around cryptocurrency. Clearly, it's not going anywhere. It is a part of the economy. What are the appropriate guardrails that at the same time protect consumers, but at the same time will not stifle innovation? These are concerns that I think about every day.
There are regulators across the city that aren't staffed the way that they used to be. At the highest level, you look at the SEC, it's not a full commission there anymore. Kevin Warsh has just started at the Fed. We're waiting on this decision from the Supreme Court on whether the president can fire Lisa Cook. You praised her as a fellow Georgian when she was nominated for that position. Noted she is the first HBCU graduate to be nominated to the first black woman as well. Depending on how the Supreme Court rules, what will that say to you just about the integrity of regulation, the independence of these institutions in the country today?
Well, I think there's a sense in which the Trump-Vance administration is at war with our own government and with these civil servants and these commissions. I might also point out that he has not even committed to appointing both Republican and Democratic commissioners to a lot of these commissions. And that does a lot of damage when you're trying to figure out the regulatory structure of something like cryptocurrency, trying to figure out a way forward. In order to have sustained rules and understandings of how things will operate, it needs to be bipartisan. But Donald Trump, bar none, is the most gifted politician in my lifetime when it comes to dividing the people. He talks about being better than everybody else on a whole range of things. That is the one thing that he is, without a doubt, without a peer.
You write about voting rights in this country, and I'll quote a bit here. The protection of our democracy hinges on voting rights because the right to vote is preservative of all other rights. You saw what the Supreme Court did just a couple of weeks ago. Talked a lot about the ramifications of that. At a very granular level, how do you pick up the pieces after a decision like that? For those who are outraged by what happens, what are the next steps that they should be taking? What would you counsel them on?
Well, let's be clear. They're trying to take us back. They're trying to take the country back to a place that looks more like 1956 than 2026. And we have to say with a clear voice, we will not go back, that we are moving forward. We, the people, as one country, one nation, even with our differences, we will move forward. And so I'm deeply disheartened by this wholesale attack on voting rights that we've seen from the Trump administration and his enablers, including those on the Supreme Court. This decision in the Louisiana case is deeply consequential, and it is deeply dishonest about the reality of partisanship and race in our country, particularly in the South. This idea that you can disaggregate partisan gerrymandering from racialized gerrymandering in our country is deeply, deeply dishonest. Basically, the court said you can draw a circle around black voters and figure out a way to diminish their voice. You just can't admit that race is driving it. Well, in a real sense, in the most fundamental way, it's power that's driving it. Politicians who are craven, who want to stay in power, they do whatever is necessary to stay in power. And it's important to point out because people see my face and here I am, a United States senator, got elected statewide. But the reality is, or the other side of that reality, is that the racial voter turnout gap has gotten wider since 2013. And in the states that used to be under the supervision, the pre-clearance requirement of Section 5, that racial turnout gap has doubled. So the outcome that we're seeing right now in the wake of this latest decision was wholly predictable.
All right. More of that tomorrow, I think.
Yes, more of that tomorrow. We did get into we spoke when voters were going to the polls in Georgia. So we talked about kind of the political terrain in Georgia, which is fascinating. I grew up in North Carolina, also described as a purple state. But he talked a lot about how Democrats still feel like they can contest Georgia in a way that they haven't been in the past. And he's optimistic about John Ossoff's chances here in the next election.
Even with redistricting, even with...
All
right.
Yeah.
To be continued. We are getting ready to celebrate America's 250th anniversary. And what better way to do that than a very fun history lesson? Professor Greg Jackson joins us next on Bloomberg This Weekend. Stay with us. It's going to be good.
Yes, most definitely.
Investors, top executives, global innovators. Join me for in-depth conversations with the biggest newsmakers on the day's top stories. Insight with Haslinda Amin, only on Bloomberg.
In case you missed it on Bloomberg Surveillance.
We should be basking in Nick's glory right now.
I think you are basking. There is quite a bit of basking.
It was just incredible.
You could feel it through the entire city.
I was there.
I mean, you're just waiting for it.
I saw Patrick Ewing. I saw everyone.
It has been an amazing moment where even a Yankees fan and a Mets fan can come together.
This is why it's so incredible for New York.
And have enthusiasm for New York City.
Everyone can coalesce around the Knicks.
Don't miss Bloomberg Surveillance live every weekday. Good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Welcome back to the opening trade.
It's Bloomberg Money.
This is the Asia trade.
This is Wall Street Week.
Welcome to Balance of Power.
You're watching Bloomberg Deals.
Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend.
This is Bloomberg Television.
Technology is embedded in every aspect of our lives and laying the foundation for the future. From finance to defense, AI to entertainment, and from the road to the stars. Bloomberg brings you the latest stories from the people and companies pushing the tech sector to new frontiers and the politics that shape global tech markets. I'm Annabelle Rulers in Hong Kong. I'm Sherian in Tokyo. Watch Bloomberg Tech Asia. New episode Friday, only on Bloomberg Television.
In case you missed it on Balance of Power.
Are you worried about this type of rhetoric? We're now looking at an indefinite extension to the ceasefire.
I think patience and perseverance are what we need here. And bear in mind that the idea that somehow after 47 years of entrenching itself in power, that what the president first said 4 to 6 weeks was never realistic. And it's 8 weeks now. It's still not realistic. The issue, I think, is whether we can take back control of the Strait in order to allow Gulf Arab oil out onto international markets. And remember, some of that oil is going out through pipelines in Saudi Arabia and the UAE in any event. But we prohibit the exportation of Iranian oil, open the rest of the Strait to get the Arab oil out, calm the markets down. I think we should be prepared to take the time necessary to overthrow the regime. We'll regret it if we let them up and find out later.
Don't miss Balance of Power live every weekday.
Welcome to the world of decentralized finance. Bloomberg is covering all things crypto, the people, the transactions, and the technology. Bloomberg Crypto, Tuesdays only on Bloomberg.
Next week on Leaders with me, Francine Lacroix. I speak to the outgoing chief executive of BHP, Mike Henry, about his do's and don'ts for making deals.
You don't want to be setting strategy in the middle of a transaction.
Changes he made at BHP.
We needed to make sure that we had a portfolio that was fit for the future.
And how to ensure smooth leadership transitions.
Day one, succession starts now.
So tune into the podcast version of Leaders with Francine Lacroix. Listen and watch on Bloomberg Television or wherever you get your podcasts.
Making money isn't about drowning in emotions. It's about understanding what's actually happening. Markets are the best way to glean signal from noise, and that is what we try to do every morning.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
In case you missed it, on the China show.
We're just over an hour away from that Trump-Xi meeting. Outside the Forbidden City is our chief North Asia correspondent, Stephen Engel.
So much is in store in a very short amount of time. Obviously, he's going to only really have about 36 hours.
Overwhelming coverage of the Trump-Xi summit.
I believe he is waiting. There he is in the blue suit. President Xi Jinping is waiting for Donald Trump, of course, to step out.
There he is, there, walking towards Xi Jinping. It's 36 hours. That's really not that long of time for the president here in Beijing. The two men. This is quite historic, Dave.
So definitely a warm welcome. Obviously, the real negotiation is going to begin now.
Definitely, the president has brought the A team there. I mean, that's an all-star lineup, and it's very impressive. I think you guys did the math there on $30 trillion worth of market cap.
Don't miss the China Show live every weekday.
Africa, a region rife with potential for growth and opportunities, but not without its challenges. Join us as we get to the heart of African business, politics, and economics, and ask the question, what's next? On this episode.
Ebola can be a risk for all of us. The solution is not to close borders. The solution is to provide sufficient support.
Premieres June 26th, only on Bloomberg.
Thank you for joining us live on Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm Lisa Mateo. Let's update you on today's top stories. And Iran says the Strait of Hormuz will be closed, pointing to a ceasefire violation. Now, that's according to Iranian media. It comes after Iran delayed the start of negotiations over a permanent peace deal with the U.S. after fighting intensified in southern Lebanon. Iran also says they are sending a team of negotiators to Switzerland. We'll keep you updated as soon as this story continues to develop. In other news, the Opal Lee Walk for Freedom, well, it was held in Fort Worth, Texas yesterday in honor of Juneteenth. The 2.5-mile walk represents the 2.5 years it took for news of the Emancipation Proclamation to reach enslaved people in Galveston on June 19, 1865. Opal Lee led advocacy efforts to make Juneteenth a federal holiday in 2021. She was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2024 and will turn 100 years old in October. In World Cup action yesterday, the U.S. topped Australia 2-0 and guaranteed themselves a spot in the knockout round after Paraguay topped Turkey 1-0. Morocco defeated Scotland 1-0, and Brazil topped Haiti 3-0. Today, the Netherlands, they take on Sweden. Germany battles Ivory Coast, and Ecuador takes on Curacao. In golf, the U.S. Open, it continues at Shinnecock Hills Golf Club in Southampton. Topping the leaderboard is Wyndham Clark at 7 under par, followed by a number of players tied at 3 under par, including Sam Stevens and Tom Kim. David and Christina,
what is Xander's last name there? I saw that on the leaderboard.
Who, Sanders?
Xander with a X-A-N-D-R?
Are you trying
would you stop?
Sorry.
Lisa, you're doing a great job.
That I practiced there from Lisa.
You're doing a great job. Don't let him haze you. You're doing excellent.
Thank you. Thank you for that update, Lisa. We are just 2 weeks away from a major national milestone, America turning 250 years old. That's 250 years since the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And if you've ever seen the musical Hamilton, you know at least one part of the Declaration by heart. I won't sing it. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
I think you were supposed to sing it, or at least speak it
you've
rhythmically.
You've set me up for that.
All right, we tried. But of course, there's a lot more to our country's history than the line of a musical. And here to tell us all about it is host of the podcast, History That Doesn't Suck, Professor Greg Jackson. He's also Utah Valley University Center for Constitutional Studies professor on America 250. And he wrote a new book called Been There, Done That, How Our History Shows What We Can Overcome. And if that wasn't enough, he also has an upcoming PBS special that involves a full orchestra and you playing a guitar. Now, you are here without your guitar today. We are still excited to have you.
Yes. Well, thank you. I appreciate the forgiveness. We will make that happen next time. I understand, David, you play the violin.
Fiddle, yes.
Perfect. Because the melody line of my theme song is usually played by the violin. So we're going to get you that sheet music in advance.
We'll make it happen.
All right, so talk to me about the melody line, the through line of American history as you look at it in your book. You say there are common things that, history echoes and it repeats, and things that are relevant to folks who may look at America right now and think, maybe we're not doing so well.
Absolutely. I like the way Mark Twain is alleged to have put it, which is not that history repeats itself, but that it rhymes. Okay. So in my book, I look at contested elections, which we had plenty of them, political violence, and fake news. Fake news going all the way back to the printing press of Benjamin Franklin. So we go from the 1790s up to 1900. I purposely avoid the 20th century to really highlight that this stuff's old. And we're looking into some of the deepest, darkest abysses of American history. But here's where it gets hopeful. My point is that these are things that the American Republic has endured, that we've not only overcome so completely that we stuck around, but that I have to write a book to remind you it even happened.
Talk to us about, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you mentioned election interference and kind of the path that we've been down in the past when it comes to that. I mean, we're looking ahead to an election where I think there's a lot of fear that it will be contested, there'll be legal maneuvering, people worried about sort of how it's all going to play out. Yeah. Take us back to the 19th century. This is something we've dealt with before.
Yes, so the finest example, the most corrupt election, I will tell you, and I claim it in my book, the most corrupt election in American history to date is the election of 1876. A contested election that led to investigation into 4 states, and what we learned is that hundreds of black voters were murdered, beyond others that were, convinced not to vote, shall we say. Accusations of bribes, attempts of bribes. South Carolina somehow managed to cast 101% of its vote.
Sure.
Humanities guy, but the math doesn't add up for me either.
Yes.
Okay. This ultimately goes to Congress, and so they not only are asking, are these votes valid? They're having to ask which set of votes to accept, because 4 states, 3 from the South and Oregon, have submitted separate sets. Both parties, Republicans and Democrats, are refusing to concede that they didn't, win. So here's Congress going, well, which set actually counts? So when you talk about trying to figure out who has the authority and power to count electoral votes, that's where this all really crystallized. And I walk you through 100 years of American history, first of all, to get through every single time, going back to even, say, Thomas Jefferson, when there was some question about the specifics of the returns in his election, and he's the guy counting the votes as vice president, or is he counting them? Because who's doing the counting, right? Passive voice in the Constitution. So I get into all of that nitty-gritty, taking us up to 1876, where we have an outcome that leads Democratic lawyer Jeremiah Black to say, we will never have an honest election again. That's his conviction. He declares that as Congress is weighing this out. And again, I have to tell you about this because we not only came through that moment, but got to the quote-unquote golden age of the 20th century.
You also talk about kind of fake news and Benjamin Franklin. I actually was just reading about Paul Revere coming up with crazy wood carvings to depict some of the things that were happening and try to foment anti-British hatred that really were a little sketchy when it came to the truth. And apparently Benjamin Franklin did something similar.
Yes. So, what you're talking about there, we get to the Boston Massacre. Now, my special on PBS, The Unlikely Union, which you can stream right now, I tell that story. So British publications called that evening, March 5th, 1770, an unhappy disturbance in which troops defended themselves from a mob. Meanwhile, the Boston Gazette is calling it a bloody massacre of innocent lads.
This carries through. We were talking about Joseph Pulitzer during the break. I mean, we know the term yellow journalism, but as we see so much division over how people are getting their news and information, distrust in the media, this is also something that has kind of a familiar resonance in American history.
And David, here's the big takeaway. This is the work you have to do if you want to enjoy the liberties that come with a constitutional republic. That's it. So this is a burden and a privilege that's fallen on every generation of Americans. And that is what I want Americans to remember as they read Been There, Done That. So it is a hopeful story because it's a reminder that we have been through worse. We've gotten out of it. And so this isn't a Pollyanna, everything's going to be okay, but more like your doctor telling you, hey, you know what? You're not dying actually, but it is time to start exercising and eating right.
As we look at American history, I think we tend to think it's on a few great men. We're always talking about these revolutionary founding fathers, but actually, when you look at it, it was a lot of little acts by a lot of smaller Americans who made a big impact over time. How does that resonate as you look at the history of consensus, the history of what people can do when they pull together in light of a common goal, whether that's preservation of democracy or whatever they're trying to achieve?
That's what we, the people, is. And the founders aren't the ones that put themselves on from that pedestal. That's one of the things that always gets at me. They were some of the first to say, guys, we messed up left, right, and center. By the way,
we had help.
And yes, and we had help. And here's an article in the Constitution on nothing but how to change it. And by the way, we're only calling this a more perfect union. We are not going to call this perfect, right? We, the people, this idea of us voting, of us participating, that's where the magic happens. They would have said that if they were here today, seated on these couches.
Let me ask you, Liza, I'll put a question to you I put to Senator Warnock, which is how do you see this 250th anniversary and intend to mark it? What is the significance of this date on our calendar, and what should we take away from the fact that we've made it 250 years?
I think there's a lot to celebrate. Look, this is the oldest large-scale, I mean, we got to put a few qualifiers in there, but the oldest large written constitution, if we exclude the state of Massachusetts, enduring, right? This republic has come a long way. And what I see as I tore through and wrote this book over the course of several years, been there, done that, I see that the American people, when push comes to shove, make the choices needed to keep us going forward. I'm excited to mark 250 years, and I believe there's 250 more to come.
All right. Professor Greg Jackson, host of History That Doesn't Suck. Thank you so much for joining us.
Come back. I'll get the fiddle.
I'll bring the guitar.
We'll make it happen.
I'm done.
I can play like 4 chords on a ukulele. That's my contribution.
We'll stick in D or G
we're looking forward to that.
Give me a tambourine.
Open.
A recorder.
Sure.
All of it. All right.
All right.
Be sure to check out our July 4th coverage, a special edition of Bloomberg This Weekend, celebrating America's 250th anniversary. We're going to broadcast live from the Intrepid along the Hudson River in New York from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock Eastern Time.
When we come back, oh no, it's the Pointed News quiz. I feel I am not prepared this week. David, how you feeling?
Quite unprepared.
All right.
I should
See
say.
how we do.
We'll
be right back.
Chance.
Okay. That's great. Stick with us.
Oh, hello there. Just wanted to say, Primer is back. We've been scouring the frontiers of science and technology to help explain the difference between the next gold rush and whatever this thing is. And in season 2, we're upping the stakes. More danger.
Now that is some high-grade uranium mineralization.
We used to have a stable climate on this Earth. Right now, we do not.
More science.
We're pushing the envelope of technology in multiple directions: software, hardware, chemistry, physics.
The cable is like very cold.
And more CEOs that can nail the photo shoot.
Hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars are at stake.
While the problems are economic, the solutions are too.
And yes, we will be talking about AI.
There is a lot of humanoid hype out there.
But our future doesn't run on hype. It runs on innovation. Watch season 2 on all these lovely channels.
My old mentor, Roger Staubach, who told me when I transitioned, football will never leave you, but you need to leave it.
Wow.
Everyone has a dream, and a lot of dreams are, my dream is to play football and play professional football, and you get the dream comes true, but it is going to end. And the day it ends, the day before it ends, you're one of the best in the world. Great. The next day you wake up, that's gone. What are you great at? And the truth is nothing, right? I'm not great at anything else.
I talk about it all the time, Steve, is this whole idea of it's not from penthouse to penthouse. And what I mean by that is you played for 15, 20 years and you're in the penthouse. That doesn't mean that you come to the business world and you're gonna be in the penthouse. You don't start on the 3rd floor or the lobby. You actually have to start in the basement.
In case you missed it on Bloomberg Tech Asia.
Humanoids are particularly interesting for many reasons. One is that they can actually go into regular, everyday environments, which were designed for humans. The other reason from the machine learning perspective is that humanoids have the shape of humans. So perhaps we can learn from humans doing different tasks and transfer that onto humanoids.
Don't miss Bloomberg Tech Asia every month.
it's that time for this weekend's Pointed News Quiz. I'm excited for it, having taken off a couple of days this week where I have not been reading the news.
And I was working, but not focused on doing my usual studying,
We'll see if it makes
which
a difference.
angers you and makes you accuse me of cheating every time I do. So let's see how this goes. Lisa Mateo is here to explain the rules and embarrass us both on television, as we do, and on radio and all the streaming platforms.
Yes, well said. Oh
Thanks,
my gosh,
I'm
the
learning.
cross-platform promotion
Tough
is
setup, guys.
high.
We're setting the bar high.
Wow.
Okay, so if you're playing along with us at home, please do, because I don't know how well they're going to do with
Not
us
well.
today. They
Rude
have
but fair,
30
rude
chips.
but
Okay,
fair.
30 chips they do have. They're going to place their bets depending on how comfortable they feel across each category.
Yes.
We have some great categories for you today.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. What do we
Okay.
got?
First category is bonds.
Perennial Bloomberg category. Yes. Okay.
That's a David Gura category. All right.
Feeling good already. The next one is streaming. Oh, not too bad, right?
Streaming, okay,
And
yeah.
the last one is yogurt.
We just
Yogurt.
talked
We
about
talked
that.
about yogurt.
See?
Yeah.
You see, you can talk about. So now think about it.
I'm going to think about
How
it.
confident do you feel about bonds?
I'm not feeling great.
0% confident on bonds.
So what are we doing?
Barry Bonds. Yeah. Okay. We'll put that right there. Okay.
I'm gonna.
Oh, you're changing up the
It's a
strategy,
departure
Christina.
for her. She usually,
yes,
nope,
she
she's
goes
doing
straight across the
3.
board.
No, you made me doubt myself. Now I'm doing it. Now I'm sticking to 3, 3, and 3. I will just
doing
give you
straight
my
across.
bonds chips now. We can all move on.
All right.
All right, David, we're going to the first one. So you're putting nothing on bonds.
Nothing.
Okay, here we go.
That's my MO.
All right. Anyway. All right.
Here's your question if you're playing along. Scotland plans to issue bonds.
Oh, gosh.
The securities were given which nickname playing on UK bonds and Scottish heritage?
Oh.
Think about it. Scottish heritage.
Yeah, now I'm
Big
annoyed
hint
because
there.
I didn't know that. It just always stinks. I put
See?
nothing on. Can I
Don't
reevaluate
doubt yourself.
with my
No, you
chips?
cannot touch your chips.
I have no idea.
All
what
right,
it
I
is.
put
Are you ready?
tartan.
Tartan?
Oh,
No,
wait, that's what I put.
Kilt.
Oh, well. Glad I put nothing down. I'll
I
take
thought
these.
you guys had it. I was so
The
close.
glee
Excuse
with,
my
for,
reach.
for our audio listeners,
Excuse
I
my
need you
reach,
to understand the
please.
glee with
Thank you
Rich.
so
David
much.
Gura grabs my chips when I have
Yes,
lost
I did.
and thrusts them
and
at
I just
Lisa
want to make
Mateo.
sure that Lisa has them in the bank with Mateo.
But yes, the Scottish National Party, they're
Yep.
hoping that the kilts encourage investors and bankers to deal directly with Scotland. So
Okay.
that's
It's got a
what
cute
for that.
name.
Yeah.
Kilt,
I
okay?
think tartan would have been good.
Tartan was good. That was a good
they're
guess.
synonymous.
need-
I
if
think
they
we
need
should have gotten
another
half points.
That was a good
nickname,
guess.
but okay.
All right, streaming.
Yep.
Feeling better about this one.
Yes, I am.
You have 20 down
Well,
on this
I
one, David.
also spend a lot on streaming.
You do. Christina has
drink
10
my
on this.
coffee. Okay, what's up, Lisa?
Here's your
What you got?
question. Fox has agreed to acquire streaming platform Roku.
Yes.
So Roku is a Japanese word for which number?
Oh.
Different twist to this question.
different one.
I like this, and I did not know this.
I'm going to... Okay.
What
I
is a
have no
Japanese
idea.
word?
Zero idea.
For
Yeah. Okay.
Roku.
All right. I said 1.
Japanese number.
Japanese,
1, okay.
I can only count to 3 in
5,
Japanese.
close. 6.
Oh.
The answer
Now we're
is
tied,
6 because
Which is exciting.
it was a 6 startup by founder Anthony Wood.
Of course.
And that's
Of course
why
it
number
was.
6.
I thought
Oh my! I am
just
doing
suppressed that.
fantastic. Look at all these chips in front of me because I get yours.
I like how the dealer feels like Lisa.
It's not your money.
Was that
Lisa.
just the Google Translate that was up on the screen?
Was it?
That's amazing. I like that.
All right,
Subtle
Good
nod.
job, control room. Good
Yes.
job.
Okay.
Next category, yogurt.
And our last category.
Yes, one of my favorites,
Where
yogurt.
If I lose this category, I'm crawling under the table. All right.
Yogurt.
Let's start with Danone or
Danone.
Danone. Yes, whichever. Okay, is suing which yogurt rival, claiming that it exaggerates the amount of protein in its products.
I think that they do. I don't know.
You do.
I don't know. I'm
It's
not
interesting.
going to wade into that.
I have to compare
Okay.
protein now, back and forth on both of these.
Okay.
And
what
see.
what are the yogurt brands I
So
know?
who is Danone
That's what I can't
suing?
decide if it's the fancy one or the regular one.
Yoplait?
And do you spell
like-
it
yeah.
correctly?
Oh, Lord.
Okay, I wrote Chobani.
I did
Oh,
as
you did
well.
spell it correctly.
I also wrote Chobani.
Very good. You guys
Looks
got
like we've
it.
got a tie.
Yay.
Feels
You
like we've
did,
got
you
a
did.
tie right here. But
So they're
first,
looking over,
fill us in.
the mislabeling of the products, how much protein. I have to actually compare labels now. Now I'm curious.
Are you a
I don't
protein,
know.
your yogurt?
I'm always looking at the protein, how much is in it.
Do you
so
get,
we'll see.
um,
There's
the
like
Greek
a protein
yogurt.
shortage
the Greek
right
yogurt.
now, right? But are they adding protein to what naturally occurs?
Absolutely.
This is all in the milk and the milk.
No,
milk
I
and
know, but I
protein.
didn't know if they were like, upping the number by adding more protein than naturally occurs. Like
I don't know.
it's like
That's what
extra
this whole
protein
lawsuit
packed.
what it's
Do you
about.
get protein milk in a coffee at like Starbucks? You don't have the
I do
protein.
not.
No.
I just drink it black.
There are
Yeah.
limits.
No,
Okay.
no milk
All right.
in my coffee.
It's protein shortage. You got to do it.
I think we need a bonus.
Well, I think we do because it's actually a tie.
All right. We definitely need the bonus.
Okay.
Oh, you're gonna like this. The bonus is social media.
Ah, yes.
Yes. Okay, here we go. What country is restricting the Telegram app after a major leak on a national medical exam? So what country is restricting the Telegram app?
Telegram?
Yeah, there was this big leak on the national medical exam. Not good news there. But what
I'm trying to think of countries that heavily use Telegram.
Just think of countries.
I have no idea.
Pick one.
I pick-
All right.
I pick
It's a tough one.
Germany.
Germany, you
I pick
pick
Spain.
India.
That's a better guess. That's a better guess. All right.
I
Well,
don't know, I guess we've just tied as losers.
Because I get those.
We are
You get to
equal.
keep
No,
those.
there's a
Just keep
bonus.
them.
You don't get
Well,
those.
what's the bonus? Wasn't that the bonus? Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bonus. You can
So
keep
we've
it.
just tied.
We're equal
I'll give it to
losers
you.
today.
I appreciate that. It's the
That's
way
kinda
they should be.
equitable.
It's peaceable.
But there was a problem. No, in India,
Sorry, I
that's
was
what the
waiting.
problem. No, I was going to give you a little data
Well, I
point
was
here.
thinking China because I was thinking national
No,
medical exams, but
correct.
WhatsApp is not used there, so that's why I couldn't come out. India
Or
was
Telegram.
That's
As the question was focused
Oh,
on.
shush, Telegram. That's what I meant. Thank you, pedantic co-host.
So people were cheating, and that was the whole thing behind it. So,
All right.
Were they
yeah.
cheating during the exam, or they got it beforehand and were
No,
sharing
no.
it?
Questions had leaked out before,
Oh, wow.
and that's what happened. So that's how the cheating took place in India.
You can test your knowledge on all 10 questions.
You can.
The remaining 7.
With
Take the
multiple
pointed
choice.
news quiz, multiple choice. Bloomberg.com/pointed. Do you play after the show? Do you go and do the other 7?
No, I go to the park and then go to sleep.
Fair enough.
That's what I do.
Thank you all for joining us on Bloomberg This Weekend. We hope you join us tomorrow starting at 7 o'clock Wall Street time. I'm David Gura.
I'm Christina Ruffini here, of course, with Quizmaster Lisa Mateo. For our listeners on Bloomberg Radio, Masters in Business is up next. For our TV audience, Wall Street Week with the one and only David Weston starts right now.
The multi-trillion-dollar industry. We'll show you what's happening in ETFs like no one else. ETF IQ, Mondays on Bloomberg.
This is Wall Street Week. I'm David Weston, bringing you stories of capital